darkness, God has sent us His light. There's no need to be anxious. He will lead in our fight. If you've been called by the Savior, you will surely win. All you have to do is live.
Into slavery, and the other thing that so their suffering, 400 years of suffering, produced perhaps the greatest nation of people there ever was. And there's no contradicting it. There's never been a nation of people as extraordinary as Jewish people. And Jesus brought His healing and deliverance power through the blood of the Jews. Okay. But now, earlier than that, God Almighty speaks through Noah, the man who's in charge of resettling planet Earth after the great rain and the great flood, in Genesis chapter 9, verse 27, that Ham's son, Canaan, would serve both Japheth and Shem, which brings us to our next issue, that although the Jews at one point were slaves to my father. Now that probably seems a little bit strange, and I'm phrasing it in such a way as to capture your attention, because you've probably never heard talk like that before. But I want you to pray about it. And think about it this way. Okay, who were the Egyptians that enslaved the Jews for 400 years? Who were they? They weren't Jews. They weren't Japheth, which are white people. So there's only one option left. They were Hamites, which is my father, right? It's a new thought. It's not taught a lot, but it's true. They were slaves to my father, Ham. I'm a son of Pharaoh. I'm a Hamite. Now, but my father kept them in slavery for 400 years. Why? To teach them the power of suffering and to bring forth righteousness and bring forth the Christ child and bring forth salvation for the entire planet in the Lord Jesus Christ. Now, the next item, the third item, of course, that we discussed last time you and I were together, and I'm going to let you hear the message that we have for today, is that Jesus will come through the Hamite nation. He came, and He will come after death has been defeated with the angel coming down out of heaven with the great chain. We're going to watch that take place. Put Satan in a bottomless pit, seal it, and then Jesus will return. It's going to be an extraordinary time. And those of us who are members of the elect that God has so chosen as members of the elect. And by the way, there are a whole lot of people that are members of the elect, but they don't know it. And that's why it's important for me to teach as many lessons as I possibly can to reach out to the elect. Even in China, there are literally thousands of people who are members of the elect in China. All right. But here's what I want to do. I have a teaching I want you to listen to. We're in the tribulation. The coronavirus is simply an instrument of the tribulation. It's not the major instrument. It's the death toll of the coronavirus is minuscule compared to some of the other items that will come along in the tribulation, such as the wars and the earthquakes that are scheduled to arrive as a part of the tribulation event as well. But we're in a difficult time. And I preached a message this past Father's Day looking at perhaps the major problem among the Hamite people right now lies within the context of absentee fathers, irresponsible fathers. And I get into the political dynamics of what many people believe to be the solution and the salvation of the Hamite people. But primarily it's about the fathers. Now I want you to listen to it. That's why I took the time today. Though I'm not in full blast in my Trust in the Lord teaching, I want you to hear this. And then I'm going to come back probably in about 10, 15, 20 minutes, half an hour or so, and have another word to say to you. But I'm going to ask the engineer to go ahead now. Stay tuned for this teaching that's already been programmed, that was taught on Father's Day here at the ATLAH World Missionary Church in ATLAH, New York. Mr. Engineer, please. In the book of Joel, chapter 2, verse 1, Joel says that we should blow the trumpet in Zion And the prophet Joel. Anyway, chapter 2, verse 1. Joel writes, blow the trumpet in Zion and sound the alarm in my holy mountain. Blow the trumpet in Zion, Zion, sound the alarm. And let all the inhabitants of the land of America tremble, for the day of the Lord cometh, for it is nigh at hand. Praise Almighty God. Blow the trumpet in Harlem, blow the trumpet in America, sound the alarm in the holy city of Harlem. And, you know, we have in our Sunday school lessons of years ago a subtitle or a lesson title of It's Time to Blame the Victim. I had a dream, I step aside for just a second, recently. And the dream that I had was I was at my usual James David Manning righteous preacher self in the midst of a dwelling place amidst a people. And one woman, young, in her 30s, came out of the mass of people, and I stood singularly, and she was dressed only, actually she was naked and weeping with just her undergarments on, you know, the garments that cover her breast and her lower segment, but nothing else, barefoot and no other type of clothing on, and she was weeping bitterly. And the suffering, and you could hear the pain that she said to me, the suffering that she was going through as a woman, that she had been deserted, abused, left for dead, ill-treated, not protected, never loved, always afraid, hardworking, never getting anywhere, a mother of children by herself. And she pleaded with me to blow the trumpet so someone could see what's going on. And I had a trumpet at the time. Recently, I've been thinking about purchasing a trumpet. I blew one once years ago. The Lord put one in my heart some time ago, but I was actually thinking about going to the pawn shop and buying one, or maybe an actual Sam Ash. And she asked me to blow the trumpet so that everybody will know. Sound the alarm about what's happening to Hamite people, to black people. Sound the alarm, she said to me as she wept. And she wept on me. She was so full of tears. And so I'd like to be able to respond to that today by blowing the trumpet in this message that the Lord has given to me. At present, we are a people globally, but more specifically here in America, in a whirlwind with several major events that are going on with the coronavirus that has taken close to 120,000 deaths right here in America, more than 2 million people affected with, and we don't know where it will end up. And it certainly is not going to end anytime soon. Certainly not until 2020 or later. While that gripped the attention of everyone, as the intubators and the people going into the hospitals and dying, then came the death of the lynching of George Floyd there in the gutter, the streets of Minneapolis, Minnesota. And it gripped everyone in terms of how horrific it was. And shortly thereafter, the death of George Floyd started the relentless marching in all the major cities and small bodunks and hamlets and towns around America. Marching, protest marching, young people with banners and flags and pictures of George Floyd. And then prior to that, of course, that gave fuel to this was the death of the beautiful Breonna Taylor, shot 8 times by a police officer with a no-knock warrant that went into her home while she was in bed with her boyfriend and fired upon her 8 times before asking any questions and snuffed out the life of a beautiful 27-year-old woman who had worked in public service. And the whirlwind continues. It doesn't stop there. It stops shortly thereafter, the so-called funeral, the same week of the funeral of George Floyd in Houston, Texas, was the death of Rayshard Brooks, shot while running away from the police officers there in Atlanta, Georgia, at a Wendy's fast food joint. And then, of course, the marching continued as a result of that. Coupled with this came the anniversary of Black Wall Street, a town just on the outskirts of Tulsa, Oklahoma, celebrating its the 99th year of a massacre of over 300 people that were all Hamite people, very successful business people, that were massacred by members of the white or Japheth community there in Tulsa, Oklahoma, at the town known as Black Wall Street or Greenwood, Oklahoma. Coupled with that is the Juneteenth celebration, where after 256 years of slavery here in America, that the Union General was able to read in Galveston, Texas, the Emancipation Proclamation that had been written and signed 2 years earlier by President Abraham Lincoln, that slavery had ended while it had continued in Galveston. And so it happened on the 19th of June, after 256 years of slavery. And so the celebration of that, 150 years of Juneteenth, was also in vogue. And not to mention that Tribulation Trump had made a decision led by Stephen Miller, a racist more so than a combination of any group of 7 racist men that you might know. Stephen Miller, who works in the White House, has the ear of Tribulation Trump. Tribulation Trump listens to Stephen Miller more so than Ivanka or his son, Donald Jr., or any of the others that might be his advisors. Whenever you see a policy being enacted or anything happening with respect to American policy, and especially to civil rights and social issues, Stephen Miller is the architect of it. He was so influential, he got rid of Steve Bannon, who we thought would be there forever. And so at this present time that we find ourselves in the whirlwind of all these things, the woman that came and cried to me, cried because she's one, or she has been affected by one of the 50 million men that have deserted their families. Now, let me make sure that we clear ourselves here and give full disclosure. I am a deserter of my children and my young age. I deserted them. I had no sense of responsibility towards them. I abandoned them to root little pig or die, sink or swim. I need to give full disclosure about that today as the things I'm going to say. I also need to let you know, those of you who don't know that I'm an ex-convict, that I've spent time inside of the prisons, several of them here in America, one in Florida, and several here in New York State. I want to give full disclosure because I want to talk about over the past 70 years, the 50 million black men that have deserted their children. Now at present, there are not 50 million total African Americans or Hamites, and at some point I'm going to just use Hamites rather than black or African American or colored or Negro. There are not 50 million African American or Hamites in America at present. But if you look at the time that when Hamite or black men started deserting their children and their wives and their responsibilities, the cumulative total of the number of men that would have done that would be in and above 50 million men that have walked away from their families and their children and their responsibilities. And if you could understand that as those men, some of them have died, some of them are presently living, that would have affected some 100 million children that would have lived at a period of time and now have died as a result of the fact that we've moved 70 years since the beginning of such a desertion by the black man or by the Hamite man. And if you can look at how cumulatively, if you get that many men over a period, and many of them, of course, have died, many of the children have died as well. But if you look at the number of men that are deserters of their families over the past 70 years, and the number of women that are weeping, who are naked and weeping and asking for someone to blow the trumpet in Zion, that the 100 million children that have been affected by this or have been affected with the absence of the kind of morality that naturally flows when there's a father in the house, that naturally flows when children began to understand a sense of respectability for authority, they grew up without it. 100 million children grew up without real, true authority in their formative years of their lives. They also, in the midst of this whirlwind, grew up understanding what poverty was the only thing that they knew. Watching television was like daydreaming. You turn on the television, there are families there with luxury and with cars and lots of food. There's a commercial on television now where a Hamite woman runs behind a little Hamite girl and says to her, "Eat just one more bite." She runs around the hallway and the little Hamite girl says, no. She said, "Come on, eat just one more bite." If I could go inside of that television, I'd slap that mama and that child. They're also sitting at the table. And the mother and the father, the Hamites, are sitting at the table. And the mother says to the children, "If you eat all the food, you can't go to bed tonight." So the little girl sits there and very arrogantly says, "We'll just sleep here at the table." How ugly that is. That's what they're selling. But there are 100 million children that have grown up on boxed cheese and yellow grits, grown up in poverty. They knew it. They understand the pangs of hunger because of Hamite men having deserted their children. Crime is just a runaway child running wild, the temptations. At the age of 9, I got involved in crime. My daddy left, my mama, and I got involved in crime, and that's all I've ever known. Runaway child, running wild. Without a father in the home, with no family structure in the community to hold the community together, crime becomes the way of life, along with immorality, poverty, and hunger. To fight your way out of the ghetto, it's not easy. Making it in the ghetto, crime becomes an easy access. Not just that, but torture. Because it is torturous what black women have to go through because black men don't support them. All of the things that come at a woman, I don't care what she thinks about herself in terms of LGBTQ, she's still a woman. She can try to change if she likes. She's a woman. And there are certain torturous items that fall on her shoulders. Unless she's got a man there to shield her from that and to protect her, she grows up tortuous. She hardens her skin. We ought to call Hamite women turtle women, because they have to develop a hard shell in order to be able to make it through the day, to exist. And then, of course, there's death. So in the midst of the Juneteenth anniversary and the Black Wall Street, I think that we'd want to at least express this, and I'm going to, if you will, blow my trumpet. But to the blacks that are presently right now marching in the streets of America, Los Angeles and Chicago, Atlanta and Philadelphia, Minneapolis, New York, Brooklyn, and other places that are marching, I can't mimic their voices, and I certainly can't impersonate them, but I would like to all those that are marching, of the tens of thousands that are out there in the streets marching, you've seen it on television, it is wall-to-wall coverage of people marching, starting in Minneapolis to wherever it is they're going to end up marching today, perhaps down in Tulsa with the Trump rally. I'd like to combine in a duet the voices, if you will, in a little satirical way here, if you don't mind me being a bit dramatic, of the voice of President Lyndon Johnson out of Texas and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. out of Georgia. And in the duet, I would like to have those voices say to everybody that's out there marching and demanding justice and seeking reform and looking for change and all the things that they're demanding and speaking that there's injustice and inequality and there's brutality and all those things that they're carrying their banners and their flags and their protests and their marching and their everything that their flags and all their placards. I'd like to have Lyndon Johnson and Dr. King answer all your questions as you march and you protest, as you bring before the city halls of America. Lyndon Johnson and Dr. King would say to you in a duet, "You're out here marching, is that right? But we gave you," Lyndon Johnson would say, "we gave you civil rights." After the marching by Dr. King and the Great March on Washington in August of 1963, We passed legislation that was unprecedented, ordering that civil rights be given to all Hamite people within every sphere of American ideal and thought, covering every aspect of American life, from equal banking, equal insurance, equal education, equal opportunity, equal housing, equal employment. We passed civil rights legislation to give justice, and the laws were written. Dr. King, Adam Powell, and Lyndon Johnson would say, you're marching still? 70 years later? You're still marching? But we gave that to you. It's enacted now in our Congress and our laws. But not just that. We gave you Voting Rights Act. You're talking about voting, and we gave you the opportunity to vote, to go to the polls and vote. No one could stop you as a Hamite person from voting, and giving you the equality that you need to have in order to be able to understand and promote the voting opportunities, schools, and others. But not just what Lyndon Johnson and Dr. King said, but we marched for you already. We marched for you. And we gained civil rights. All those signs you're carrying, we've already carried those signs. We've already marched. And we've gotten an answer from the highest authorities in America, from the Congress and the U.S. Supreme Court, that these laws are enacted. But not just that. As a result of that, Dr. King would say, and Lyndon Johnson as well, as a result of our marching 70 years ago, we gave you Hamite people millionaires first, and then billionaires like Oprah Winfrey. Put her on television, made her the queen of the day. Some say they owned the night, but Oprah owned daytime television and daytime eyeballs and became an uber billionaire, rising up out of the poverty and out of the fact that there was unequal opportunities for anybody of Hamite. And for a woman in particular to rise, we gave you Robert Johnson, who formed the Black Entertainment Television along with other business enterprises. He too became a billionaire. You're still out here marching. We gave you millionaires. We gave you billionaires. We gave you Tiger Woods. Elder Hartfield's grandfather used to play with the Negro League baseball team, and my grandfather, James Charles McNeil, was the manager of a Negro League baseball team, because the Negroes were not allowed to play in the majors, so they formed their own. But we let you now, Tiger Woods, play in the golf tournaments. Michael Jordan, now a billionaire, playing basketball. Spike Lee, the entertainment industry, a billionaire in the entertainment industry. Denzel Washington, Eddie Murphy, all of these. We have now, you're still marching after these millionaires, these billionaires, and you're still marching, you're still carrying your signs. Have you not realized what has been given to you already? What are you asking for more? And not just Eddie Murphy, but Don King, we gave you. Michael Jackson, of all people, were able to purchase the Beatles' repertoire of songs because of his own popularity and power. But not just that. Dr. King and Lyndon Johnson would say, not just we give you billionaires, and did we give you these opportunities before, but we gave you Hamite politicians, don't you remember? And we gave you cities to run, with your Hamite brothers being the leader of those cities, the father, the elder father, Tom Bradley of the great city of the angels in Los Angeles, California, the mayor of that city, Harold Washington, the mayor of Chicago, Illinois. We gave you Tom Bradley, David Dinkins here in New York City. Mayors, Adam Clayton Powell, congressman, passing more legislation than any other congressman in the history of that institution, the number of bills that he put on the table and were passed. Adam Clayton Powell, Charles Rangel. We gave you Jesse Jackson, whatever you might think about that. And you're still marching. You're still marching. Why? You're still saying that there's inequality. We're still saying that there is injustice. We gave you all of these things aforementioned, and yet you're still complaining. We even gave you 2 Nobel Prizes. Now, come on now. Come on. We gave you 2 prizes of the Nobel Order over in Stockholm. One to Dr. King, of course, and the other to, well, we'll But not just that, but we gave you after everything else you were not satisfied. We gave you the presidency, Johnson and Dr. King would say. We put you in the power of the President of the United States of America, the highest office on the land, the most powerful man in the world. We gave it to you, and you're still marching? You're still, not only that, but we gave you Jesus. Even though you had to receive him on the plantation, you didn't reject him. And why would you? Considering what you were worshiping when you were in Africa over there, all that witch doctor stuff. Yeah, we gave you Jesus, and then we gave your pastors private jets. You got more than 100 pastors with 100 private jets and the millions of dollars and mansions like you've never seen that will make the plantation owner down in Mississippi come again because of the mansions that the pastors, we gave you Jesus. Your pastors got private jets and mansions galore. We gave you all of that and you're still marching. Really, really, really. All of that we've given to you. All of that has happened. You know, Dr. King I'm sure would agree, Lyndon Johnson, perhaps some others, would say, and America should say in general, every American that's presently alive, especially of the Japheth tradition, we have nothing to give you less. We have nothing to give you. We gave you the presidency. All right, okay, we're taking a brief intermission. We'll be right back with more of that message of Blow the Trumpet in Zion. I'm laying out the clear and unmitigated facts that politics and policies have failed the black people and failed them miserably. In fact, it has created a whirlwind, if not an earthquake, of destruction in the lives of the families of black people. And we're going to be, Hamites is who they are, African Americans, as some are referred to as, but primarily the overarching name for them is biblically they are Hamites. And so I'm coming right back in just a few moments with the rest of the message, but it's clear, and Ray Charles can see, that politics as a way out and policies as a methodology, they have both failed and failed miserably. And there's only one place to go, and that's to Almighty God. And I want to ask you to just help me, pray with me, to overcome the massive obstacles of the media, money, and politics that is preventing the word of God, which is the bread of life, that needs to go into the families of black people, and particularly in fathers. Let me read a scripture to you today before we return to the message, Blow the Trumpet in Zion, from the book of Proverbs, chapter 4, starting at verse 1. And it reads, Hear ye children, the instructions of a father, and attend to no understanding. For I give unto you good doctrine. Forsake ye not my law, for I was my father's son, tender, and only beloved in the sight of my mother. He taught me also and said unto me, Let thine heart retain my words, keep my commandments and live. Get wisdom, get understanding, forget it not, neither decline from the words of my mouth. Forsake her not, and she shall preserve thee. Love her, and she shall keep thee. Wisdom is the principal thing, therefore get wisdom. But with all thy getting, get understanding. And just one more verse. Exalt her, and she shall promote thee. She shall bring thee to honor when thou doest embrace her. Again, I'm appealing to you going forward. The days ahead of us are cloudy, and they're filled with more of God's wrath, but they're also saturated for the elect with God's protection. Remember that God's protection, moreover, that the Lord is with you when you rise in the morning. In the morning when I rise, give me Jesus. In the morning when I rise, give me Jesus. In the mornings when you rise, know that the Lord is with you. I don't care whether the winds are blowing, whether it's raining or snowing, or whether it's sweltering heat, or whether there are wars and rumors of wars and coronaviruses and every other calamity or bill collectors or absence of one thing after the other. Remember, in the morning when you rise, that the Lord is with you. You are the elect. You are members of the elect. Don't you ever forget it. Keep in mind that circumstances and calamities and the works of evil will always proceed, but the Lord is with you. And I want to ask you to pray with me that I might be able to get the bread of life to a suffering people so I can prepare the Hamite people to be the vessel through whom the Lord Jesus Christ will return. And they shall be the progenitors of God's word in the 1,000-year reign of peace. I'm going to need those of you who are already established as Japheth people. I have served you. I need you to come alongside me, Japheth and Shemites. Spread the word, white people and Jewish people. I need you to come alongside me and help me get the word out. Or I'm not running a civil rights or a political organization, nothing of that sort. I'm simply preaching the bread of life. I need you. I need you. Humble yourself and exact no charge from me. Exact no demand of me, no payment or even recognition of you. Exact no charge from me. Just come and help me and God will exalt you. All right, let's go back to the message already being preached at the ATLAH World Missionary Church on Father's Day. Mr. Engineer, take us back into the message, please. We've given you billionaires. We've given you the leadership of every major city in America. We've given you voting rights. We've given you civil rights. We've given you everything you've asked for. There is nothing left to give. There's nothing after the presidency. There's nothing left to give. What's all the marching all about? You know, I said that Joel said that God told him to blow the trumpet in Zion and sound the alarm in his holy mountain. And I want to say it's now time to stop asking, and it's time to start blaming the victim as a miserable failure. Every person you see that's complaining, every person who's carrying a placard or a sign, every person who sits in these offices and yet are bitching and moaning out, you'll allow me to say that. And by the way, let me say parenthetically here, a lot of people say, well, a fellow said to me, I was interviewed by a fellow who's a writer for a Catholic magazine the other day. He came to our church and he wanted to talk to, I did it online, I'm sorry. And he said to me, he said, you know, a lot of stuff in the media that I've heard you say. I said, yes, that's right. He said, well, they don't call you so much anymore. I said, that's true also. He said, do you think it's because of the way you have phrased all your statements? Do you think you could have been a little bit more politically correct, a little bit more polite, that they would still want to hear from you? And I quickly said to him, the only reason they'll listen to me is because I say it the way I say it. Were I to be nice and polite, they would have never come in the first place. I know there are children listening to me, but let's get real. Children need to have their attention drawn up to this matter. They need to know exactly what the deal is. I don't want to play hide and seek with them. Years ago, parents used to not want their children to know what they were doing, say, well, to spell it. Your child goes to school. They can spell too. And so they're looking at you like, what's up with you? No, I say it like it is. Everybody don't agree with me. No, I don't try to make it look good, sound good, smell good. No, I say it like it is. If it stinks, it stinks. And by the way, the things I say, it's not me that makes them ugly. They're ugly things that I point to as things that are ugly, that's all. So You're still in the street bitching and moaning after all these things. You're still bitching and you're still moaning. You ought to be ashamed of yourself. You're nothing more than miserable failures. Black Wall Street. The 300 people that were killed in Black Wall Street, massacred, and others ran off out of town. They've asked me to speak this morning. Not just the woman who came to me in her underclothing and asked me to blow the trumpet. The 300 dead of Black Wall Street asked me to speak. They said they trust me. Well, praise God. That after they fought gallantly, mind you, they didn't run. The military, U.S. military, well, National Guard, the state and the local police, all over Oklahoma, the men of Black Wall Street, they fought gallantly with rifles and shotguns and every other method that they could fight to defend their women and their children, their churches, their homes and their businesses. And the fighting went on for days until finally the military was called in, and the white military forces along with local and police were able to overthrow the black defenders of their homes, but they died on their feet rather than begging on their knees. They've asked me to speak to you marchers today. They've asked me to speak to all of you that are in the streets today and have been in the streets and will get in the streets. They've asked me to say to you, after they built Black Wall Street without civil rights, they built Black Wall Street without equal opportunity. They built Black Wall Street without the government help. They built Black Wall Street and became millionaires in their own rights. Some 300 businesses, they're in the Greenwood section of Oklahoma, and they owned them all. They were successful, they're prominent, and fathers developing their children. They were an extraordinarily successful people, and they had their own. Whatever it was that was needed economically, they were smart enough to provide it. 100 years ago, 100 years ago, they've done what you allege to be marching for now. They've asked me to say a word to you this morning, and I think I'll go ahead and let you have it. And that word is that you people that are marching and protesting, that you're nothing more than miserable excuses for human beings, that you have rolled over and let the ancestry whites of those of the Oklahoma uprising take Harlem for you for not even a song. You ought to be ashamed of yourselves. You ought to be ashamed. The flagship. You're running around here on television, on these media programs, talking about Black Wall Street was an example of what black people can do and what they can be, and business owners, and you're right. But you had Harlem last year. And rather than fighting to keep it like they fought to keep Black Wall Street, you rolled over and gave it to the white man. Shame on you. Shame on you. They didn't have to burn your churches. You sold them. They didn't have to bomb them. You gave them away. They didn't have to take your businesses. You ran and left. Talking about the people of Black Wall Street have risen from the grave and told every last one of y'all marching in the streets, talking about honoring Juneteenth and Black Wall Street in the language that is pure and simple. Every last one of you marchers, go to hell and do it now. Bunch of damn freaks is what you are. You had Harlem more prominent than Black Wall Street. And you gave that away. And you're out there bitching and moaning and complaining. It's a shame before God. It's time to blame the victim rather than the white man. It's time to blame the black folk rather than the white folk for what has taken place. And black women, you know, you're running around here. I heard someone in one of the marches talking about the black woman is underserved, and several other things, less defended, and they're right. But you know, you Hamite people, you traded talking about the black woman and her efficacy and your admiration for her, and you're defending her, putting her first, the black woman. You've not done that. You marchers have not done that. No, you haven't. You traded Shirley Chisholm, who said, I can't be bought. Shirley Chisholm was a bad mamma jamma. Shirley Chisholm, Congresswoman from Brooklyn, was the first black presidential candidate. And being tired of men not stepping to the plate, she stepped up and said, I'll run. And Wall Street came to her and said, well, now, if we're going to support your cause and give you campaign funding and financing and turn all the screws we did against Hubert Humphrey and the others to be able to get you the nomination, you're going to have to talk our talk and walk our walk. Chisholm told her, I can't be bought. You can talk that talk, but I can't be bought. She was a feisty little something, and we need to pull her up as a woman of example. Shirley Chisholm was, and she ran for presidency. She didn't get it. She would have gotten it had she decided to go along with that program out there in California to let the liberals run roughshod. But that's not my point. She was the first black woman that was shown up, black woman. That's right, from down in the Caribbean, talking just like a Geechee. And yet, when there was what you considered, those out there marching, carrying these signs and marching and protesting and writing these Black Lives Matter in the street. But when the opportunity came potentially for president to be black, you chose one that was half black. You didn't get the whole loaf. You went for half the loaf. But more importantly, don't talk to me about how black women are disrespected, how they're not defended, how they have to root little pig or die, how they're the hardest working woman on the planet. Don't talk to me about that and that things ought to be done for the black woman, because when you had an opportunity to make a president of the black people black, you allowed him to come from the feet of a white woman. Stanley Ann, don't talk to me about black people. What the hell is wrong with you? You allowed a white woman to have that honor. Shirley Chisholm says for all of y'all, same thing Black Wall Street said, go to hell, you bunch of miserable freaks out in the streets. You're nothing more than grasshoppers and crabs. Go to hell. She ran as a black woman, and yet you gave the presidency, the motherhood, to a white woman. Talking about black women need to be defended. You didn't defend her. And you let Stanley Ann Dunham be the mother of the first so-called black president. So that's my message from Black Wall Street. I ain't through. I'll have more. And from Shirley Chisholm and Lyndon Johnson and Dr. King. You know, Obama, the alleged black messiah, became president. And he is a national failure. By anybody's estimation, he's a failure. A national, a cultural, and a racial failure. He's failed in all three categories. He's the do Negroes no justice president. That's who he is. You know, when you compare Obama to Abraham Lincoln and his struggles in his 4 years and a brief few days as president of the United States of America. Abraham Lincoln, and you're comparing Obama now, who's the do nothing for the Negroes president. Abraham Lincoln was able at a time when nobody believed it was possible, pass the 13th Amendment, giving human and American citizenship rights to every black person, even while they were slaves. Abraham Lincoln. With a heavily, if you will, Southern, if you must, at the time, Democrat Congress and Senate was still able to get legislators in both houses to agree to give to the slaves under the 13th Amendment to the Constitution, the 13th time it was amended, give them citizenship rights. And in the 14th Amendment as well. Abraham Lincoln, that's what Abraham Lincoln did for the homeboys. We're talking about, well, what did Obama do? Well, not only did he do that, was he able to give them, but later wrote the Emancipation Proclamation, a great document compared to the Gettysburg Speech, where Abraham Lincoln wrote in a proclamation the emancipation of all colored Negroes and slaves in America, that they would by the jurisdictional powers of the United States presidency, that they were declared free under the auspices of the Union services and the Union soldiers. That Emancipation Proclamation, he wrote that. That's what he did for black folk. And not just that, but probably one of the most gripping decisions of any man, any president ever having to face. He brought America to a civil war and felt that it had to be done, that he would not pass the buck. He would not. As painful as it was going to be, that brother would be fighting brother, that within America, there would be a civil war. There would be death across family lines. There would be death across state lines within the same context of people that were once one united people are now separated, and the battle lines were drawn and the cannons were fired. It's a tough decision to turn the cannons on your brothers in the South. But he did it because he did it for black folk, no matter what anybody else has to say. And he had to do it. The Civil War had come after 256 years after the first slave set foot on American shores in Jamestown. 256 years to the date when slavery ended. But that's how long that industry of slavery let's think about it for a second. It wasn't 20 years, it wasn't 30 years, 256 years. But you have to remember, if you're out there complaining and marching in the street with all these freaks out there, that the Jewish slavery in Egypt lasted 400 years. So I would think that when we compare apples to apples, we may need to come and say we got away light. And not that I'm praising slavery, but I think you need to know I'm trying to help you compare Obama to Abraham Lincoln. Well, forget about him. Let's look at another president. Let's look at FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, right? And Franklin Delano Roosevelt, in the midst of the only other event that has gripped America as grievous as the Civil War was the Great Depression. It started at the stock market crash of 1929, and it gripped America for 14 solid years with employment up above 25 to 29%. Soup lines every which way you look. People lost their jobs. People lost their lives, dying early. And Franklin Delano Roosevelt, when an economy unlike our economy today, had to figure a way how to bring America back from the brink of destruction. And America went to hell economically and stayed in hell, suspended in hell as an economic group for years. The soup lines continued. The begging, the no jobs, the brokenness, the poverty was all over everywhere. He himself reigned as president for more than 12 years, working on that process, the longest running president in the history of our nation. But in the midst of all of that, he brought the Jobs Act. He was able to get people jobs, the government funding those jobs and working with various congresspersons and legislators and businesses. And one of the great things that Franklin Delano Roosevelt did, though many would like to call it a socialist, quasi-communist act, was he instituted Social Security. Looking ahead, Franklin Delano Roosevelt was able to look ahead, knowing that we are going to come out of this recession, this depression, and it took 16 years to do it, that we need to make sure that the government has now set up programs so that the institution of older people would always be protected by a Social Security program, that there'd be monies taken from salaries put into a savings that would be government orchestrated so that when persons were ready to retire, there'd be a benefit for them when they were too old to work. They couldn't get up, they were sick, that there would be something to put in Social Security Act, one of the greatest legislative acts that have ever been legislated, and so many people still benefit from the Social Security Act. Franklin Delano Roosevelt did that. Now we're trying to compare him, and I want you to think, well, what the hell did Obama do? That's what these people have done. But not just that. Franklin Delano Roosevelt defeated imperialism. You do know that Emperor Hirohito and Admiral Toyoto and others attacked America at Pearl Harbor and then went on to try to crush us as a nation. The imperialist government of Japan, sun worshippers, the imperialists. At the same time, the Axis of the Allied forces of Mussolini and Hitler were ravaging Europe. And Roosevelt was able to lead us into 2 wars that simultaneously fighting the Japs in the South Pacific and Nazism in Europe. Fighting those 2 wars, able to bring America together and get Rosie the Riveter to make airplanes like you've never seen, tanks and tires and all kinds of ships. They were making ships every other month. They were selling out battleships and aircraft because under Roosevelt's leadership, he called America together and we became one mighty manufacturing force. While the men went off to fight, Rosie worked inside of the airplane factories and made the ships, the trucks, the tanks, and the Jeeps that Marjorie Wilson now drive. That's where the Jeep comes from. And so that they could have an easy access vehicle that could roll over all kinds of things and still take men into combat. Roosevelt did that. And then defeated imperialism. He defeated imperialism and he defeated Nazism and was able to do all of this while president. And so we're trying to figure out, well, no, he did all of that. My God, what has Obama done? That's what I want you to ask a question about. General Eisenhower, had his headquarters in the Rock of Gibraltar, just off of the coast of Africa there, at the foot of Spain. Mother Seals, Mother Shekinah, right there is where Eisenhower commanded the Allied forces, came back and ran for president and won. And after Eisenhower being in Europe and driving in on the autobahns in Germany and in France and in Italy, the autobahns are superhighways. I remember traveling to Germany years ago. I lived with my friend Heinz Down, and we got on the German highway, which is like the interstate, called the Autobahn. And I think you go as fast as you want. He was driving like 90 miles an hour. And there's these long stretches of highways. And even the trains in Germany, the railroad tracks, the train speeds were up above 120 miles per hour. The structure, the travel structure in Germany and France was far above what America was. So Eisenhower saw that while he was in Europe and then put together what is now known as the interstate system. You want to travel west, leave New York, go across the George Washington Bridge, go to Interstate 80. There's not one stoplight between here and San Francisco till you cross the bay. Interstate 95, all the way from Hialeah in Florida, all the way up to Maine. And Interstate 70, Interstate 10, Interstate 40, Interstate 25, he put together these interstate systems, replacing the old Route 66. And so travel in America became something, and you can enjoy the highways now. When you get out on the highway, you can travel, no stop signs, no stoplights. Accredit that to the infrastructure powers of Eisenhower. You look now at what Tribulation Trump is talking about and what Obama should have done. Our bridges are crumbling. Every time I drive across one, I don't know if I'm going to make it. The highways are buckling. They're not what they used to be. They need repair. Our tunnels leading into New York, Holland, and Lincoln, and other tunnels and bridges across America. A bridge up in Minneapolis failed not long ago. The Mianus Bridge up in Connecticut just collapsed one day on a Sunday. People driving across, the whole bridge fell, and people fell into the Mianus River going up to Stamford, Connecticut. Our bridges are crumbling, and every time you get on a highway and you cross a bridge, you better pray that God lets you get across that, because we don't know if they'll sustain themselves anymore. So we need infrastructure. Eisenhower was able to do it. What about Obama? What about Tribulation Trump? I'm going through this, but I thought y'all need to know about it. Just one more if I don't mind. Nixon, whatever you may think about Watergate, and he was, no more than, I think, what Donald Trump does now with foreign policy and the power of government would make Nixon look like he's not yet been born. But Nixon was a great orator. And Nixon opened up Red China. I'll never forget him standing there in Red China with an overcoat on, he and Pat. And they had opened the door relationship between China that had been closed since the Boxer Revolution in 1914. There was no interaction between China and America. And Nixon went over and knocked on the door and said, we want to be friends, we want to be trading partners. And as a result of that, I have been able to travel to China twice with students to be able to enjoy the Far East. Shirley Chisholm was the first black person to run for president. And she would look at Obama. Lord have mercy, what Shirley would say to him. She didn't give me any words, and probably she gave me, I don't know if you ever heard Shirley speak. Anybody know Shirley Chisholm? That woman did not bite her tongue. She's forward. I don't even know if I can say it up here. As rough as some of the things I say. Let me share one other thing with you when you compare these people to Obama, because I'm going somewhere, because they're out there marching and marching and marching and marching and marching. And white America gave you Obama. They gave you him. They gave you civil rights. They gave you Voting Rights Acts. White America gave y'all nappy-head, flat-nosed people billionaires. Your pastors running around in private jets. Oprah Winfrey giving away $1 billion. Michael Jordan. Jay-Z. They've given you all of that. And you're still out there bitching and moaning, talking about we shall overcome.
It'll make a junkie say Jesus is Lord. I got a word in my mouth. I got a word in my mouth.
Welcome, everybody, to the Manning Report. I am the quintessential American, James David Righteous Rebel Manning. How's everybody doing on this 25th day of June in the year of our Lord 2020? In the midst of the tribulation, and one of the weapons that are being given prominence now in terms of God's deconstruction of creation is the coronavirus, and America is the epicenter of the coronavirus. Listen, I'm halfway casual, halfway not so casual today. Actually, I'm going to be releasing a interview that I did with Jeff Rentz on the Jeff Rentz program earlier this week as a part of today's Manning Report. So hang tight for that. But I thought I would introduce that process to you so you'd understand exactly what's going on. But before I get there to Jeff Rentz and what we discussed this past week, I want to let you know that we're in the midst of the Civil War. Jesus said in Matthew's Gospel, chapter 24, verse 6 and 7, that there shall be wars and that rumors of wars. We are now in the midst of a war. The techniques, the weapons that are being used are a bit different from what would have been understood to be traditional wars. So let me pull your coat to something as we are now in the midst of this so-called Black Lives Matter earthquake, what's going on in our nation. The wars, the war that we're in right now is against authority. And it's being led by a people who hate authority more than God hates sin. And they are still, after America had given black people, African Americans, Negroes, coloreds, the presidency, and a half-baked, half-white, half-black President Barack Hussein Obama, they're not satisfied. So here, check out, when you see them trying to pull down statues and successfully pulling them down, moreover, co-opting many governments, especially in the epicenter of the Civil War and the Confederacy, Richmond, Virginia, with a now, if you will, Democrat governor and Democrat mayor of the city of Richmond and of the state of Virginia, Democratic mayor, governor. where they're taking out all the statues and all the memorabilia and all of the things that represents the Civil War. This is another war. The war, the Black Lives Matter is continuing and extending the war beyond the Gettysburg Address that was given by the Honorable President Abraham Lincoln. They're continuing the war. Their war is now against the statues, the memory, and the Confederate flag. We are at war again. But this time it's being led by a bunch of heathens. It's being led by a bunch of bastards. It's being led by people who are without authority or fathers. It's being led by a bunch of renegades, and it must be put down. Black Lives Matter must be stopped. Now, here, let me say this to you, that America, in terms of its equality attempt, its Civil Rights Act, its Voting Rights Act, gave to the black people its highest prize in terms of its politics and its policy, the presidency of the United States of America. Gave it to them. Sure they did. Gave it to them, to be sure. Absolutely. Now, he failed, Obama. He failed miserably. I mean, he never intended to help black people in the first place. He didn't know how. He didn't know how to duck back in the alley. Born in Kenya, but he didn't know how to duck back in the alley. He failed. So now, rather than celebrating the fact black folk and black lives that won the greatest prize on the American, if you will, carnival circuit, the presidency, now they're declaring war on the Confederate flag. I'm against it. Oh, I know that the Confederate flag represents the group that sought to defend itself. I don't think they were sought to overthrow America. I don't think that. I think the Confederates sought to defend themselves and defend their rights. Now, what they were doing was prophesied by Almighty God that black people would be slaves the same way God prophesied that Jews would be slaves in Egypt for 400 years. The prophecy of them being slaves in America is in Genesis chapter 9, verse 27. And that Jews will be slaves in Egypt is in Genesis chapter 15, verse 13. So they were only fulfilling that prophecy. And the war, like when the troops in Charleston fired on Fort Sumter, it was simply to defend what they believed was their way of life. Now, I'm not happy about being a slave, but God spoke it before I was born, and my words fall far short of trying to change anything that God put in his holy word in Genesis chapter 9 through the mouth of the prophet and preacher of righteousness, Noah, that Hamites would serve Japheth and Shem. I can't change that. However, what I want to do now is to say, don't look at this as what CNN and MSNBC and the New York Times and Washington Post and others are posting up as black lives now looking for change, and it's time for reform, and it's time to take Aunt Jemima off the pancake box and Uncle Ben off of rice. What we're looking at is another war. It's a different kind of war. But we are at war. And the object of Black Lives Matter, this despicable, degraded beyond the levels of hell's basement group called Black Lives Matter, have turned their angst against the generals, against the Confederate flag. But they're not going to stop there. They're not going to stop. They want to get George Washington because he owned slaves. Somebody needs to tell them that the Bible said that he would. Somebody needs to tell them as they go after they go after Thomas Jefferson. Somebody needs to tell them that Sally Hemings, who was the mistress of Thomas Jefferson, if you could get the average black man across the ghettos of America to treat the black woman as well as Thomas Jefferson treated Sally Hemings and bequeathed unto her and to her children wealth, if you could get the average black man in the ghettos of America to treat his woman the way Thomas Jefferson treated Sally Hemings, I think we'd be good to go. But having said that, oh, these Black Lives Matter, these degenerates, these despicable characters, these devil dogs are not going to stop. You would have thought that the presidency, giving him the presidency, would have made everything. What else can we give you? Now the second Civil War is afoot. Now the problem with this is that you are going to see a response to this Civil War. They're attacking the generals, they're attacking the flag, and now Mayor Bill de Blasio has turned his former lesbian wife, Charlene McCray, loose on the culture of New York. He turned her loose, gave her the power. You decide what remains as cultural icons in New York. He's given to Charlene McCray. Her first object of destruction is to tear down Gracie Mansion. That's the home where the mayor of New York City resides because it was built by slaves. Ain't that nothing? Going after the museums in Teddy Roosevelt and a whole lot of other things that they're going to be going after churches and everything else. These people are crazy. I'm telling you, we're at war. Black Lives Matter has been successful, and they are fueling their war. It's being fueled, it's being supported, it's being supplied by the media, and CNN in the lead with the Washington Post and the New York Times and others giving. So it must be stopped. The trouble is, it will not be, because we're also in the tribulation. This war that you see by these degenerates, these despicable, these father deserters, these mother rapers that you see out in the street, these characters of the night, these bats that stand upright and carry signs that says Black Lives Matter, they should say Bats Lives Matter. That's what they should say. They should say virus-infected bats, because that's who they are, these Black Lives protesters. They're nothing more than bats. They should say Bat Lives Matter. And then finally, before I go, that there needs to be a word said about Bubba Wallace. I think that the NASCAR Racing Association ought to take a vote to expel him from the group. That's right. The rope that was found was not a hangsman noose, and the whole world got stirred up over him because he decided to lift his voice against the Confederate flag. So the war, the Confederate war, has been rejoined. Forget about Abraham Lincoln's great address at Gettysburg. Next thing you know, these Black Lives Matter gonna be down there in Gettysburg, tearing down the monuments down there as well. They going crazy, I tell you. But the war has been rejoined. The Civil War that ended in April of 1865 is now back on again. And the generals are being attacked, but these bats, these black bats that call themselves Black Lives Matter, is not just attacking the Confederate forces, but they're attacking the Union forces and general forces and religious and biblical and godly forces as well. And let me conclude by saying this: I understand. If it were left to me, I would never see anybody enslaved. But I have to tell you that my father Ham, who established Egypt and the pyramids and the great mechanized armies and the palaces that was so prevalent, and the medicine that was used in Egypt was established and designed by my father Ham. I'm a Hamite, the second son born to Noah, that boarded the boat during the time of the great rain and the great flood. And so I want you to understand that my father kept the Jewish people, the Shemites, in slavery for 400 years, and not just that, but afflicted them, according to Genesis chapter 15, verse 13. I'm not in favor of it, but it happened, and I'm not in favor of what happened here in America, but it happened. It's history. I think it should remain. I think every statue, whether it's Stonewall Jackson or Robert E. Lee, or whether it's Jefferson Davis, or whether it's the vice president of the Jefferson Davis regime, who wrote that Negroes or black people or Africans or whoever it was he referred to as us in that piece that he wrote some time ago, a substandard, or whether it be the Dred Scott decision, indicating that black people were not of the same equality of white people. You don't get upset by that, because you know it's impossible to be true. It's impossible to be true. Anytime you look at biblical history and know that if black people were able to keep enslaved the Jews for 400 years, according to Genesis chapter 15, verse 13, and the history of Joseph and Moses in Egypt, if they had the ability to keep Jews in slavery, they obviously are not inferior to anybody. What we need to do is to look at the ignorance of anyone who would say such things. I've heard a lot of ignorant people. I think people are the most ignorant league you're going to find anywhere on the planet right now. People like Al Sharpton and Barack Hussein Obama and the leaders of the black movement and the trannies and the homos and the queers. Those are people that need our prayers because of their ignorance. No. I'm not in favor of slavery, but it's already happened. It's history. Let the statues stand and let the history remain. Let's look forward to the future. All right, I've said all of that. I need to now turn loose now the interview I had with Jeff Rentz earlier this week, and I'll be back in the midst of all of this to have more words to say to you. Mr. Engineer, please turn loose that interview.
Years ago, I had our first guest on regularly. We used to talk a lot, and Pastor James David Manning is one of my heroes, and he is working harder than ever in what we used to call Harlem to try to help America's African Americans wake up and get a grip. He has put his life on the line. He is outspoken, but he always is worth listening to, no matter who you are or where you are or what you are. And it's really a pleasure to have a man I like to call my friend, James David Manning, back on the program this first hour tonight. Pastor Manning, welcome back. It's been too long, and I apologize for that.
Thank you very much, Jeff, for having me, and I greatly appreciate that very long introduction. But more importantly, let me congratulate you for 27 years of broadcasting, and starting out at a time when social media was not as prominent as it is now, nor the television programming that you so accurately described as powerful as it is now. And you have survived, and you're still surviving. So 27, I have to take my hat off and say congratulations on a great job that's been done. America certainly should find you as a national treasure.
Thank you. Thank you very kindly. It has been something that, like you, and I think the both of us understand this very well, we are blessed to be able to have the confidence and certainly trust, at least respect, of a lot of very wonderful people. We're trying to reach out, and you have been doing this for a long time. And I guess the way to start out the conversation, just with a kind of a silly general topic, but when you look at what's happening now, how do you feel? What's wrong out there? Now, my feeling is that this is clearly a long-planned, internationally financed effort to co-opt the minds and value systems of our young people and turn them against the orthodoxy, the political system that we use to maintain relative order. It's an attempted overthrow. Let's just be frank about it. That's my view. How do you see it?
I think that if I start locally, Jeff, I'm in Harlem, as you have indicated to your audience, and the folk know that I'm here, and I've been here now for 40 years in Harlem, and I've worked tirelessly to try to wake up the people of this community who are in a extraordinarily deep sleep. If you ask me, what do I think and what do I feel now? it appears to me that the sleep is getting deeper, or the injections that cause us to stupor, that, as you say, is heavily financed and heavily influenced, is growing worse. Now, I have not given up. I feel very strong about the potential of one day being able to see people rise up. But when I look at what's presently happening now and what's been happening over the past few years, if I look generally at Harlem, now I can speak globally and I can speak nationally about what I see on because there are a number of national things that perhaps we can discuss here tonight. But if I'm talking about black people in general, I see a more depressing group of people than there were 60 years ago or 70 years ago and even 40 years ago. I see a decline, a breakdown in morality, a sense of selflessness, a sense of having absolutely no idea of what true morality and life is all about and what they should be about themselves. And rather than moving forward and gradually growing out of the process, I see people getting worse. You know, Jeff, I've looked at the past 150 years since the advent of slavery or the Emancipation Proclamation or the end of the Civil War. And it appears to me that the first 75 years, that's from 1865 to, let's say, 1950, were years where progress was made, where there was a strength in morality and there was a sense of people knowing what is right and what is wrong and dependence but the past 70, going back from 2020 to, let's say, 1960, has been a decline in the sense of truth, morality, and I've seen the people grow weaker and weaker and weaker. And I would say it could be discouraging, but I am not. I feel at some point in time that I'm going to break through, and that people are going to hear me ultimately. That's one area that I'd want to discuss.
I want to just comment on what you just said, and I think you've just summed it up magnificently. I think you've got it nailed right down to the 60s. In my view, during the war years, after the war years, in through the 50s, Americans of all colors, especially African Americans, were really, I think, united in that wartime feeling of assimilation, becoming one culture, one society. I remember as a little kid seeing African Americans out on Sundays like regular white people, white families would do. The same thing. They'd get dressed up. They'd take the kids out. They looked terrific. They looked fantastic. And they had pride. They had pride in how they looked, how they carried themselves, how they walked. And my God, our culture then, and a lot of people listening don't remember that, but my heroes from that age, and I mean this, let's just take sports. The number one greatest, most inspirational boxer of all time, pound for pound, was Ray Robinson. Sugar Ray Robinson. He was 175 fights, won 120 by knockout, and the way he handled himself in front of the cameras as a role model for all youngsters, all kids, was marvelous. And as far as singing, it's not rap. It was singing. And Tony Williams, the lead singer of the Platters, was the best, most wonderful singer I think I've ever heard in the popular genre. Now, that's just to say that what you're pointing out now, we've got, many more singers who have made much more money than Tony did, but what are they purveying to young people that makes them inspired about life and morality and living and the values that we're supposed to have? Nothing. It's garbage. It's not music. So we have gotten weaker, and I just want to commend you for that observation. It's true. We've all gotten weaker.
Yeah, speaking of singers, and of course I could go back to not only Sugar Ray, but Floyd Patterson and several others that were favorites of mine during that era.
Sure.
And probably the problem with you and I, Jeff, is that we have a little bit of age upon us, and not everybody in your audience can personally relate to that period. But, Jay-Z is a billionaire, all right?
With a B, a billionaire.
Yes. Right. And you talk about what Tony Williams or what others would have made during the time that they were singing, and certainly singing in a way that represented humanity and represented family. And they all sung about love. I'm in love with you, you're in love with me, or, I see the harbor lights, or...
Sure.
But
there you go.
There is now a culture of young black men that all they do is bitch and moan. All they do is cuss. All they do is call women, the black woman, the most despicable names. The most despicable things come out, and they get paid billions of dollars to it. And Jay-Z is not the only one that gets paid large amounts of money to degrade his mother, his sister, the women of his own genre. And I mean, who would have ever thought that that's where music would go? But that's what.
And they pay him. They pay him to do that. Think about it. They're supporting him.
I know that.
It's crazy.
The thing I say to my audience from time to time is that, and there's a young fellow who's on the air now stating that once these entertainers, Jay-Z, these rappers, go into the what he calls Lucifer's door, they don't really know black people anymore, and the people who own the music industry and the media industry, these types that own this industry, who can promote you or they can demote you. You're not going to go anywhere unless they put their stamp of approval on you. I don't care what you're singing or doing. And once they go in there, the more vile they are, the more they are promoted. The more vicious they are in degrading and teaching our young men and women, our young boys and girls, how to think in degrading modes, the more money they make. It is a very shameful time in which we live. But I'm still hopeful, as I stated earlier.
I think what you've just said is so important. And I keep going back to that word weaker. Our young people are no longer able to, let's just call it, think for themselves. They're not proactive about life. They've been trained. I don't blame them. It's not their fault. They've been trained to be reactive. They're given a stimuli and they react. And they pay for it. And it's very malicious the way this whole thing is set up. But yes, they've been degraded. There has been a tremendous breakdown in morals. They're virtually gone in terms of much of the pop culture here now. There's nothing there. Pornography was the key in destroying the nuclear family, morality, guidelines, boundaries, and I think good parenting. And that goes for both white and black and Latino families. When you don't have a two-family household and a strong mother and father, you got nothing. You got kids that are going to be turned loose at 9, 10 with the cell phone you bought them, and they're gone. Goodbye. Gone.
I agree with you completely about the pornography aspect of what it has done in terms of demoralizing both black and white groups. I mean, it is everywhere, and it's now accessible to young people. They know how to go online, how to find it, how to become sexual degenerates and sexual predators. They understand that process.
Oh, yeah.
And it's being fueled everywhere, and you can't get around it. But there is the other thing, and I want to talk about. I want to name Black Lives Matter before, because Jeff, think about this for just a second. When the rap music that we're talking about a moment ago became eminent in the 80s and the 90s, and up into the year 2000 or so, there was this thing called the East Coast, West Coast rappers. And the East Coast rappers were in in competition, not just in musical competition as some sort of sing out, but they were in violent death competition with each other, with people like Tupac Shakur, Suge Knight, and all that crowd, and Run DMC. They were actually killing one another back and forth across in the music genre. This same group that was violently killing black men, and singing about killing black men, and by the way, singing about killing police officers as well. Now out in the street, and them and their children out there marching with Black Lives Matter, as if somehow or another. I mean, Jeff, if you took the number of black people that were killed by black people just in the rap industry, forget about Chicago, forget about some of the other places, that it would dwarf the number of people that allegedly have been killed by either white people or police brutality. And they are swelling in their numbers. The media is covering them like this is Gone with the Wind or some great movie that's not ending 24/7. But these are the very people that do all the killing of each other. And no one, Jeff, I'm going to let you say a word, but I've watched the media now for the last 3-4 weeks, and I've not heard one commentator say to black folk with respect to what's going on, but have you considered your own inhumanity towards each other as a racial group? Nobody's ever stated that. It's always white folk. They're always wrong. White folk are doing us wrong. White folks they're doing us wrong. We got to get some justice. We need to. It's a very sad time.
Boy, you said it again. You did touch on the word Chicago there. Oh, just over. Now, this is Father's Day weekend in Chicago. 9 dead, 100 shot altogether. Father's Day weekend just in Mayor Lightfoot's Chicago. What are you going to do? It's incredible. What you just said is right. They just have been turned inward on each other. And we talked about porn a little bit, but let me also mention the other side of that porn coin and we'll call it soft porn. It's a coin, it's got two sides. Soft porn, that's the kind of stuff you see on primetime TV. Women being abused, yelled at, mistreated, women dressing like hoes, men acting just primitive. These images, when our young people stare at the television, they go into a trance state. The first time takes about 60 to 90 seconds. After you've become used to going into a trance state, staring at the television image, the big screen, or your cell phone, doesn't matter, you are no longer able to discern what is going into your subconscious mind. It just pours right on in there. So all of these images, all of these stereotypes, all of these constructs take up residence in your subconscious. And over a period of time, they tip you over and you become that which you are staring at. This is not for everyone, but most. This is why they all talk the same. They all dress the same. There's rigid peer pressure to be in or you're in trouble. You're gone. So I've never seen anything more disconcerting and frankly discouraging than what I see now in our younger people.
There's a commercial we're running now for the past 3 to 4 months regarding a drug called Bictari. And the drug Bictari allegedly is a drug that allows a person that's affected with HIV, of which there is no cure at present. But the Bictari drug has a way of suppressing its presence in testing or in semen. And while it doesn't cure the individual carrier of AIDS, it allows you to have sex without infecting your sexual partner, as it were. And even if a test is given in you that if you're using Bictari on a daily basis, even a test will not be able to determine that you have. And so they are promoting this drug by saying, just be who you are. continue to be homosexual, continue to be male-to-male sex, but use Victoria and you can do what you want. And then it ends with two men standing in a really intimate dinner evening, and they kiss one another. But the two men happen to be African-American or black men, and they kiss one another right there on television. And I mean, they do a tongue kiss. Jeff, you probably remember when kissing on television was, I mean, you know, it was considered taboo. Two men kissing on television now, and it's shown in prime time, midday, and every
and that's
other time.
going into the minds of our children. This is horrible. And when I say children, I'm going to go out a little bit on a limb here and talk about Generation Z, the last generation. That's 25 years and younger. I kind of like to think of.
All right, we're coming back with more of Jeff. It's a very enthralling interview with Jeff Rance, and I thank God for the opportunity to share with him. But I want to say a word to you today regarding Princeton University's African history professor, Eddie Glaude. You know, you've heard me talk about him of late. And in my message on Father's Day, I pointed out how his hero is James Baldwin, as my hero from the Negro era is Booker T. Washington. His is James Baldwin. And we pointed out in the book, Go Tell It on the Mountain, one of James Baldwin's first release, he talks about how he would have sex with his younger brother in bed at night. Now, Baldwin's father was either a Baptist or a Pentecostal preacher right here in Harlem. And his brother would never told the father that actually what James was doing was raping his brother in a pedophile way, because he was a young boy. They were both young. And the reason why this is important is because Eddie Glaude is now releasing a book that's going to be released today. I will not call the name of it. And he's heavily promoted by MSNBC. And he is an African history professor at Princeton University. And as I was just discussing with Jeff Rance, that the media pushing this homosexuality, pushing this immorality, pushing this sexual debauchery, Eddie Glaude is pushing that. So students now going to Princeton University is going to get a deep dose of James Baldwin, who was a pervert beyond perverts. Some thought he was a pretty prolific author. The people of Harlem don't think so. And that's why they chased him out. But I would want to say, for whatever it's worth, you need to boycott the book that Eddie Glaude is going to release today. And, you probably would think about this several times. I would recommend that you don't send your children, and this especially to Japheth people and Shemites, that you don't send your children to Princeton if you want them to remain somewhat sane. Now I understand why Liberty University has such a burgeoning thousands upon students at Liberty University, because many parents, especially Japheth and those of the Christian ideals, are trying to avoid places like Harvard, Princeton, and Yale because of the filth that the professors inculcate or teach or inject into the minds of young, tender students going to those universities such as Princeton. Boycott Princeton. That's what I'd like to say for whatever it's worth. But it is a sin and a shame that Eddie Glaude, who is a promoter of James Baldwin, he worships James Baldwin the way a Pentecostal worships Jesus. And it's so ugly what James Baldwin is or was. And Eddie Glaude finds that interesting. I thought I would say that in light of the things I was just discussing with Jeff. Now, I want to say this to you as well, that we are at war. There's a civil war going on now. This is not some sort of just figure of speech to identify. Black Lives Matter has been loosed. And if you can imagine that a python or a cobra snake loosed in the midst of a group of people, not knowing where he's slithering to next, and striking as he goes. That's what's happening now. Black Lives Matter is a cobra that has been loosed upon humanity. And their war is starting against the generals, but they're not going to stop there until they actually pull down Jesus Christ. You know, somebody sent an ugly text to me or ugly email to me the other day stating that I should take down the image of Jesus that makes him look like he's white in our opening intro to the Trust in the Lord hour, that I should take that down because Jesus looks like he's white. Well, they're not going to stop these Black Lives Matter. Why am I telling you this? The reason why I raise that question is because we're in the tribulation. So understand it as that process. But then on the other hand, if you are members of the elect, then you will be protected and you will be saved from the wretchedness that is now. Black Lives Matter is a cobra, a satanic one, a snake that has found its power. Black Lives Matter is the snake that found its power, that slithered into the Garden of Eden. We need to pray. I'll be back. I'll have more to say. I want you to meet me this weekend at the ATLAH World Missionary Church Pulpit of Power. But I thought I'd take some time today to expose you to my interview to Jeff Rense. Mr. Engineer, bring us back.
Brutally exploited by these images in the media. They have no mercy on them. And when I see these rioters out there, all colors, it doesn't matter, they all appear to be Generation Z, 25 or younger. Not all, but let's say 90%. And I just know that these young people do not have the wisdom to know what the hell they're doing. They don't. They're programmed. They're useless eaters. That's what Kissinger would call them.
I've never heard the term useless eaters.
That was a New World. That was a New World Order globalist term that Kissinger dropped out. That's how they look upon these people. But they just aren't engaged in the lifetime pursuit of knowledge, which leads ultimately to wisdom. They're reacting on a very superficial level, and they're just not there. And I wonder what these young people are going to turn into in another 10 years, 15, if they live that long. There's nothing going on.
One of the things that I've observed about Generation Z, you're absolutely right. They have their sense of foundational morality and values. They've gotten from social media, which is an unrestricted, ungodly, if you will, source of which they are constantly engaged in 24 hours per day.
Yep.
But the thing, Jeff, is if you talk to them, they think they know better than you. They are absolutely convinced. And then you've got baby boomers, Jeff, that encourage them. For instance, the media and other major, if you will, industries with the financing are encouraging these people to be who they are. They're not encouraging them to develop and to be people of great moral values that built this nation, that had established it as a city on a hill that it once was. So what we're looking at is people that actually they're being robbed of their opportunity to know life, and it isn't just that they're out there stupid and ignorant. But the other thing, there's a sense of joy in development and an accomplishment, leading towards a sense of wisdom and contributions to humankind. They don't understand that. And I think one of the things that probably has inspired them is they think that out there looting and marching and cursing and defaming as they are is they somehow they feel they're accomplishing something, that they're mimicking something that perhaps took part in the past that makes them look like they're doing something of nobility.
You know, you just keep putting your finger on key issue after key issue. These young people, you mentioned boomers, we call Gen Z Zoomers. Some people do anyway. And you're right, their future has been already stolen from them in most cases. they're never going to come around to saying, geez, I missed something back there. I missed something. I missed a foundation. I missed morality. I missed responsibility. I missed accountability. I'm not a victim. I'm in charge of what I do on this planet, and I'm going to be accountable. They're never going to get to that level. It's been stolen from them. You're right. You're 100% right. Like you said, this kid had grown up on rap. He didn't know about this. He didn't even know this kind of music existed. And look what they've lost. It's been stolen from them. Oh, gee. All right. Here's what we've got now. I've got a couple of clips with the great actor Morgan Freeman. All right. He's featured in this.
That's the Shawshank Redemption.
No, these are little clips from interviews, and he's talking about what's going on now with whites and blacks, and his first little clip is with Don Lemon, or Lemon, however he pronounces it at CNN. But listen to what Morgan Freeman, everyone, has to say about a kind of a leading question, but that's okay. Here, take a listen.
Do you think that race plays a part in wealth distribution, or either a mindset that you can't or cannot? Yeah.
No.
You don't?
No, I don't. I don't. You and I, we're proof. Why would race have anything to do with it? Put your mind to what you want to do and go for that. It's kind of like religion to me. It's a good excuse for not getting there.
Where are we in the United States of America?
Now this is the rapper Lil Wayne. Lil Wayne. This is him.
Skip, they wouldn't want to ask me that. They wouldn't want my answer to represent it because God knows I have been nothing but blessed. My whole path, these 33 years have been nothing but a blessing. I have never, never is a strong word, I've never dealt with racism, and I'm glad I didn't have to.
How's that? Lil Wayne. And see, when you can get Americans, I don't care who they are, to stand up and tell it like it is, it often comes right through. And I'm going to jump around here in this little video. Here's Morgan Freeman again with Mike Wallace.
Of racism, stop talking about it.
Oh, let me back this up here. Here we go.
Solvers who don't want the patient to get well.
Here it comes.
That was said by Booker T. Washington.
How are we going to get rid of racism? Stop talking about it. I'm going to stop calling you a white man. Yeah. And I'm going to ask you to stop calling me a black man.
You know, it's frustrating to me that people take race and they make it personal.
A younger,
you know what I mean?
Comedian.
Like we're at a loss in this generation. If you look at it in the 80s, Archie Bunker was a stark racist. Stark. If you don't know who Archie Bunker is, look him up. All in the Family, great show. The Jeffersons, stark racist. Fred Sanford, stark racist. But you know what black people and white people did? They laughed. You watch 48 Hours with Eddie Murphy and Nick Nolte. Both of them hated each other because he was black and because he was white. You know what they did? They laughed.
But I asked you what the racial breakdown was of your audience. Do you remember this? You told me the only black face you could see in the whole audience was your makeup artist. I believe that's what you said. She was in the front row, right? A lot of white kids love rap.
Yes.
Explain that. What does that say to you? What's the message of it? What's the bigger picture of it?
I don't want to be bashed because I don't want to sound like I'm on the wrong if there is a side, but I thought that was clearly a message that there was no such thing as racism. That's what I thought that was.
You know, I said, and it's probably get me in trouble, but I said to some of my colleagues recently, so I know that it's an issue, but it seems like every single day on television I'm talking about race, and it's because of the news cycle, it's in the news, but sometimes I get so tired of talking about it, I want to just go, this is over, can we move on?
And if you talk about it, it exists.
Right.
Yeah. It's not like it exists and we refuse to talk about it, but making it a bigger issue than it needs to be is the problem we have.
Mm-hmm. There you go. Morgan Freeman again. Just to give all of you an idea out there that there are a lot of African American, Black Americans who get it, We're all. That's the kind of country we could have and should have had.
Jeff,
that was the prevailing ethos.
Booker T. Washington is my hero of heroes. That was mentioned by Morgan Freeman. He's the man that has inspired me to be the man I am today, let down my bucket where I'm at. And I'm glad to hear that being said tonight in our discourse. But there's something I want to say, and I said it this weekend preaching in our church. Well, I said it earlier last week. We need to stop calling ourselves black and white. I'm not black. I'm a brown-skinned man, and I've seen my wife is even a lighter color than I am. We need to start calling ourselves either by the names of the fathers, going back to the biblical structure of Noah, and we can talk about that at another time. But I think the racist name, color names, causes us to think about ourselves in racial ways.
All it does is divide. It completely divides instantly.
It's a tool to force us into a corner and to take a side. It forces us to take a side. But the other thing is, and that needs to be said, is that and to use the term ideal, black people need to be blamed for what is happening to them. Morgan Freeman just said it. He says, listen, you work hard, you do what you need to do, and you get to where you need to do. You don't involve yourself with the other ideas that are self-defacing and self-defeating. There has been the last 50 years where nobody has held black people accountable for the mess, for the fathers that desert their children, for the crime in the neighborhoods, for the black-on-black crime that they do one towards the other, for the absence of development, for the absence of looking towards and developing themselves into a character of people that can be respected. I mean, if you look at Michael Jordan or Magic Johnson, one of those boys out on the basketball court, you respect the fact that they have developed those talents out there, and you go get out there to play them. No matter who you are, you respect these boys can play. But when you look at the 99.9% of black people in general, whether they be men or women, they have not developed, they have not caused other people to respect their integrity of how they manage their own neighborhoods, how they manage their own families, what they've done with their own children, their own work ethics. They haven't done it, and nobody's blaming them. They blame everybody else for what their own problem. I heard this Anderson Cooper the other night on television talking about this Rayshard Brooks guy, or Don Lemon, it was Dan Jones, saying that because he was on parole, he ran from the police officer, and how awful that was, that somebody needed to have pity on him because he was on parole and they didn't want to be arrested. Well, hell, if he's on parole, why is he out there in the middle of the street drunk, driving a car, impeding traffic, falling asleep behind the wheel? If he is afraid of being arrested, then stay home and don't become a public drunk. I mean, nobody blames the younger people and this generation for their own faults. I need to say that. I want to say that. I had to say that.
Thank you. No, it's all about accountability for our decisions. He decided to drink and drive, and he was so drunk he fell asleep in line at Wendy's in his car. That's drunk. Okay? There is responsibility. Unfortunately, it had a real bad ending.
Yeah, it did. No doubt about that. There's no doubt about that.
No.
But if he had stayed home and not gotten drunk,
of course,
we wouldn't know anything about this.
Of course.
So where does the responsibility? Where does the accountability start? Where does the responsibility start? After?
Starts when you're. It starts when you're a little kid at home, and your mother or father, hopefully, will teach you about accountability. And he's been in prison. That's accountability. He went to prison.
Yeah.
Ex-convict.
Yeah.
Okay? He didn't learn his lesson.
No, he did not.
No?
He certainly did not.
All right.
But these are items that I think that we're going to have to rethink the conversation. First of all, we got to stop the titles, the racial titles, and we got to realize that it is a weapon that continues to keep us divided. However, If we were to roll back the clock to the time of the Platters, America was a much better America. In Harlem, men wore suits and ties, and the women were well dressed. You could walk down the street any day of the week and see respectable people. You thought you were on Wall Street in Harlem, New York City. Today, you see men on canes and crutches of the same age. You see them homeless. They haven't changed their underwear in months. They don't own a roll of toilet paper. They live in a homeless shelter. They buy nothing for themselves. They don't own a spoon or a fork. They come out during the day and stand on the streets and go back to the shelters. You could walk up and down 125th Street, which is from river to river, which is about a 2-mile stretch, and see maybe only one or two Hamado black men wearing a suit or a tie. It is pathetic. And just 40, 50 years ago, that was the absolute different opposite of what we see going on today. There has been a shift in morality. There's been a shift in our thinking process, and we're doing far worse now than we have ever done. And I have to live with this, by the way, every day. But I'm still hopeful that one day these people that are sleeping will wake up.
I hope. That's all I can do is hope. It is a daunting problem when you think about the mass media in this country and what it purveys constantly. And I don't care if somebody sits in front of a TV or looks at billboards. The messages are all of the same ilk. And as far as African Americans go, I think they really need to understand who put them in this original mess 400 years ago. And they're still being controlled by that same international group right now. And they will not look at it. They cannot. They don't have the knowledge. They don't know how this whole thing started. It wasn't their fault. Hell, they were kidnapped and stolen from their homeland and brought over here and sold. And billions were made on them in dollars back in the day. This was a horrible industry. Who was behind it? See, that's not talked about. They need to talk about that. They need to understand history. And maybe it'll help some of them. I don't know. I don't have the answer, Pastor Manning. I know when you talk to people in your church, you reach out and you're able to connect with people. And I can't even imagine how many lives you've turned around over the years simply by holding out the hand of wisdom to somebody and holding a mirror up at them. Go ahead.
The power of money and the power of enslavement hasn't stopped. It's just changed its method. It hasn't stopped. The purchasing, the enslavement, the mental enslavement, and the physical flesh enslavement, the ball and chain of the antebellum South is not evident today. But the whole concept has just elevated itself to a new social age. It hasn't changed. The perpetrators haven't changed their tactics either. I mean, it's still a very profitable industry. As I said before, listen, let me tell you something. You could, Jay-Z, and I call him, but there are hundreds of others of them out there who get paid billions of dollars in the music industry and in the media industry. Mm-hmm. And mainly this industry is run by Jewish people that controls this segment of our planet. And you will never hear Jay-Z say anything about Jewish people, but he will cuss black people and black women up and down the street. But he will not. And the moment he does, they'll snatch his record deal, snatch his money, and rape his wife and kick him on the street. And he'll never be anything anymore. And that's the kind of power. That's a form of if you will, enslavement mentally. And then he is sent out to degrade all other young men. And because he's got such power and exposure, he's in media, he's a giant, he's larger than life. These young boys idolize him and want to be like him and are willing to sell their souls to do whatever it is to get to where he's at. It is a very powerful demon that is being used, and it has not stopped over the past 400 years. And I don't know that anybody plans to stop it, except for me.
Well, as long as there's money on this planet and greed, it probably won't. But you're right. Most young people, they're idols, athletes.
All right. So much for Jeff. Thank Jeff Rentz. If you're a listener of Jeff Rentz, let him know we put his program on blast today. And again, thank him for allowing me to share with his extraordinary audience. And before we wrap everything up here today, I want to say to you, of course, as I've stated previously, I need you to not let these people, don't let Black Lives Matter, don't let LGBTQ, and don't let just black people in general run me out of Harlem. I ain't going nowhere, obviously, but it's just good to know that I got people who believe that I ain't going nowhere. But I want you to know that they're trying to run me out of Harlem. They want to steal my voice. And I have a word, the bread of life in my mouth for the people that are suffering and for America in general and for all races. I've got a word of unity. I've got a word of from Almighty God that is a blessed word. That is as blessed as the word that Moses had in his mouth when he talked to the people about the promised land that God had orchestrated earlier to Father Abraham. So stay with me and help me to continue to get the word out in whatever way that you possibly can. And be ready to be elevated as well. For instance, I know a number of people probably listen to me and wonder how on earth can I say that the Confederate flag should stand and that the statue should not be taken down, and those taken down should be reconstructed all the way from St. John's Church down in New Orleans to Richmond, Virginia, the plaza there with Robert E. Lee and Jefferson Davis. They should be reconstructed. People say, well, how can you possibly say that? Just keep listening to me. Just keep listening to me. I'm nobody's fool. I'm the Lord's servant. Just don't let them run me out of town. Don't let them do it. And you can stop it, and we can be victorious. I'm James David Manning, everybody. I'm the Lord's servant. Peace out.
Let's get close to the Lord. Oh, yeah. Let's get close to the Lord. Oh, yeah.
Welcome to today's current events class. I am Sabbath Rachel LaFleur. Welcome, everyone, to this week's edition of the Current Events class. I am your host for today, Sabbath Rachel LaFleur, and today I have with me some of our high school students from ATLAH High School. You've seen them before, but I'd like to introduce all of them to you. I have with me today Israel Lewis, who is a ninth grader in our high school. I have Layla and Yegbu, who is a junior. I have two brothers, Zachariah Alhaimi, as well as Ishmael Alhaimi, who are also juniors in our high school. Welcome, everyone. How are you doing today?
Good.
All right, that's great. Now, there's a lot to talk about today, and I was trying to figure where should we get started. Obviously, you all have been watching the news. You've been watching what's been going on in the world. And one of the biggest things to say that is in the news now, it's what's going on with Black Lives Matter and the protest. I don't want to take away from the coronavirus, because we know that that is still going on, and we will talk about that as well. But Black Lives Matter has been in the news lately, especially since the death of George Floyd and also Rayshard Brooks. They have skyrocketed. They are everywhere. We are seeing their writings everywhere. And Pastor just spoke about this morning, the fact that they are going to be actually painting a mural here in Harlem, on the streets of Harlem, stating Black Lives Matter. But I want to talk about Black Lives Matter in this respect. This past weekend was Father's Day, as you all know. And in Chicago, it has been stated that 56 people, it has gone up since then. 104 people have been shot over Father's Day weekend in Chicago, and 14 of those people have died. Now, the news has stated that 4 of those people were children, and it's conflicting because the numbers change. The first time I read this, it was 56 people that were shot and 10 people that were killed. But regardless, the point is many people have been killed over the Father's Day weekend. Now, this is certainly not the first time we have heard news like this. This has been ongoing, especially in the years of the so-called reign of Obama, the long-legged Mac Daddy, the so-called first Black president. People were killed in Chicago repeatedly during the time that he was president of the United States. And it is still going on. And I will mention why that is taking place. But in regards to Black Lives Matter, as you all have seen them over the past few weeks and protesting and all of these things that has been going on, all of these people killed in Chicago on a continual basis, all of these Black people being killed by other Black people in other cities and states around this country goes on repeatedly. We all know that. In the communities that you live, you may know that to be true as well. So when we talk about Black Lives Matter, or this organization that states Black lives do matter, my question to you is, do you really think that they represent Black lives that truly matter? Or what do you think about this organization in general? Layla, I'm going to start with you.
Well, I think that I think half of them, they do represent that Black Lives Matter, but I think the other half, I feel like they just want, they want to give out, how do I say this? They want to give out, race, anger towards white people. It's not about equality for them. It's more of a hatred thing for whites instead of being united and equal. I think, that it's not always, for some, it's not always about the better. It's just getting back at them, as revenge or whatever. But yeah.
Okay. Ishmael, I'm going to go to you next. What do you think?
Well, I do have to agree with what Leela said about the how some people do it because they do believe it, but other people just don't do it because of that. I do think I do believe there's a lot of people in the movement that do believe that Black Lives Matter. How they've always been going after Black people. That much I do believe, but I believe some others aren't doing it for that. They're just maybe doing it saying oh, I support this, maybe get more in this social media, or saying oh, I support them. I do this because I'm nice. Mm-hmm. I just feel some people are doing more for publicity than more for the actual movement.
Okay. Israel, what do you think?
I have to agree with Ish and Layla. But I understand. I feel like some people understand and some people don't. Some people understand why they're doing the marching and stuff, right? But I believe that majority of the other people are just doing it, I don't know, I guess for fun, or as it says, for publicity, right? Because I truly believe that majority of the people do not understand why they're marching, if you understand what I'm saying.
Okay. And Zachariah, your thoughts?
I have to agree with the rest of my classmates that this started off as a good thing. It started off as what it was supposed to be, but then opportunists came and they saw advantage. They saw to take an advantage of this. They started to take advantage to rob stores, start riots, cause fires. And some people aren't in it for the Black Lives Matter. They're in it because they don't want the government, or they don't like the police. They want to have their own thing, and they saw this and they took an advantage of this.
But let me ask you all this question as I'm listening to all of you speak regarding this. When we talk about Black Lives Matter, what you are saying is that if you are a Black person, and I'm just saying Black because that's the word they're using, you know that we use the term Hamite. But what they're saying is that if you are a Black person, that your life is worth something, that your life matters, that you are not to be disregarded, that you are not to be thrown away when they say the Black Lives Matter, right? So my question to you is this: if Black lives truly do matter, and you're saying that Black lives are worth something and that they should not be disregarded and they should not be thrown away, then why don't we see protests taking place like we are looking at now when Black people kill each other? Because this happens on a day-to-day basis. As I just stated to you, 104 people were killed just over this past weekend in Chicago. Why don't we see protests the way that we have been looking at over the past month? In regards to these Black people, don't these Black people lives count? Were they not important? Was it just about George Floyd? And we know that he was murdered. I'm not taking that away. We know that this police officer murdered him. But when we talk about Black people and you talk about their lives really mattering, what about 104 people who were just shot this past weekend? What about the 4 children who died over this past weekend in Chicago? Don't their lives matter as Black young children? Or is it just about when white people do something to Black people? I mean, I want you to really think about that when you talk about an organization who is so-called saying that they represent Black people and that Black people are so important to them, but yet we only see the outrage when white people do something to Black people, but yet when Black people do things to other Black people, we don't see that same outrage, especially at the extent that we are looking at now. What do you say about that, Ishmael?
Well, I think it is because of that. I think it's mostly because they have this tension between the white people, the Black and the white, the tension between each other. Because even like a long time ago, white people had Black people as slaves, and that tension hasn't gone away. Even though nowadays, no one here has been a slave, but that tension is still there. And even though it wasn't us, we were like, oh, but you did this. Your people did this, and you might do it again.
So are you saying that their focus is just primarily on, as you're talking about the tension between Black and white people, that their focus is just primarily on that tension? That's all it's focused on.
Most of it is based on that tension of what the white man did to the Black people, what they did to them. That's why they're like, if you see a Black man shoot another one, they're not going to talk about it. But if you see a white man shoot one, it's a big deal.
But why isn't that a big deal, Ishmael, as you just brought up? If a Black man kills another Black man, which happens all too often in the communities, why aren't they outraged about that? Does that not matter? Should that not matter?
No, it does matter, because it's still, you're taking somebody's life. That's still someone dying. But I still think it's because they feel like they still that tension. They kind of want revenge in a way. Mm-hmm. They kind of want them to suffer how they did. They want them to go through the same stuff they went through, or like something similar to it. So they wait for like a white person, like how with George, a white cop killed him. They're like, okay, that's it. A white man did it. We're gonna just get on that. We're just gonna start, building on that. Like how this always happens with the white cops are focusing on the Black people. Even though like there's some other people, like gangsters, these Black people like killing other Black people, but they don't want to focus on that.
Right.
They want to focus mostly on the racial part of it. How the white man killed the Black man.
Okay. Layla, I heard you make a sound as I was speaking. What do you think about that?
Well, I would have to agree with Ish because on a day-to-day basis, when Black people kill Black people, it's like, okay, we killed them. But I think for people, it's like they see the perspective of, oh, if a white man touch my people, that it's really an issue. Like, we gotta protest, we gotta do this and that. But when it's our own people, it's like, okay, and it happened. I think people are so blindsided and focused on the part where it's a different race, and the race is a white man, and that they see it as a threat, and they see it as we have to do this, we have to step up because they're killing our people. But we kill our people all the time, like on a day-to-day basis. And I don't think people are realizing that this goes both ways. Yes, it has happened a lot with with white people, but this also goes both ways with Blacks as well. And also, just like it said, that you still taking somebody's life,
right?
So that should matter as well. But people is gonna always have their own mindset of things and how they comprehend and think the way they think.
Okay, Israel, what do you have to say?
I mean, Layla just said everything. I don't think I can say anything to that, but Black on Black crime, I don't think they pay attention to that. It's like a regular thing to them, as they said. When a white person kills a Black man, yes, they're gonna go out, of course. I think it's only for attention though, because as you said before, I don't know why they don't go outrage when it's Black on Black crime. I don't know why I don't get on the person who killed his fellow my fellow, I guess you could say.
Right.
But I don't know, people are just stupid sometimes. I think they don't know what they're doing sometimes. They don't think, they just want attention.
Well, let me ask you all this question, and I'm going to throw this to you, Zachariah. Do you think that they have gotten used to the fact that Black people just kill one another, and so that's just the way it is? There's nothing we can do about that. Why even try to protest? Why even try to be outraged or say something about it? That's just the way it happens in the hood. That's just the way it's going to be. There's nothing we can do to change it. Do you think that is their mindset, Zachariah?
That's a tough question.
Yeah, I know.
I feel like they have adapted. I feel that they I don't know how to say it.
Take your time.
Well, I feel like they've adapted to what they do, and I feel like for them this is common. They've okay with this because it's not someone it's someone that from their race that they're not gonna be mad at. Well, mad at to a certain extent. That they've been dealt this card. And they've decided to deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
And I
know it's a tough question that I'm asking, but I want you all to really just think about it for a second as we are watching all of this unfold in the world. Do you think that they've just this is just the way it is? Black people gonna always kill Black people, so why even raise an eyebrow to that? Why talk about it? Layla, do you think that they've just...
Yeah, I do. I think that they just, they adapted to it. Like, this happens all the time, but it's our people. Like, we shouldn't have something against our people. But if it's a person of a Caucasian descent, it's okay, they shouldn't be killing us. And I think it's a matter of the fact that they need to open up their eyes and see that it's their people and other people killing one another. And I don't really think that they are gonna have an issue with their own kind killing one another, because they probably made up their mind as like, it's our culture, this happens. So, I mean, why try to fight against it? But let's fight against the white man. I'm not trying to say I support the killing,
right?
But I'm just saying.
Now, you just raised a thought in my mind as I'm listening to you. As you just stated, it's our people. It's part of our culture. This is part of our culture. So this is just the norm. So let me ask you this question in light of what you just stated. Do you think that obviously the mindset to focus on raising the communities, Black communities, and again, I'm using that word Black, I'm using that term, but I want to say Hamite communities. Black Lives Matter, could they be used instead of focusing on the racial aspect? And we all know that there are racists in the world, right? That is not going to change. No matter what they're doing right now, you know, they're getting all of these statues taken down, all of these flags taken down. It's not going to make racist people be any less racist towards Hamites. It's just not going to do it. So when you talk about change, it's not going to change. But my question to you all is, should their focus be on raising the communities, raising the Black communities, building the Black communities rather than race? Do you think that if they focused on building the Black communities, we got Black communities that don't have fathers in the home. We have Black communities where there is severe poverty, where people are dependent upon the government to take care of them. Black communities where there are many uneducated people that are there, Black communities where they are doing nothing but selling drugs and being involved in gangs and just hanging out and so forth. Do you think that they could do more good, or I shouldn't say more good, excuse me, because they're not doing any good right now at all. But do you think that they could do good if they would put their focus on building the Black communities instead of what they're doing right now?
Yes. I want to say yes, they can, because what I think is that the building the Black communities, it starts within the home first, like having a father in the home and listening to your father and everything. Because what I think is that most Hamite boys who grow up in like places like Chicago and Harlem, stuff like that, we know half of them grow up without a father, right?
Right.
So they're not disciplined enough to listen. So when the police say, "Okay, sir, pull over," and they get an attitude.
Mm-hmm.
You know, instead of actually listening to what they got to say, there's a slight chance they might, leave there alive instead of being killed. But because you're in a home where you don't have a father who disciplines you and tells you what to do and everything, you get the sense of, oh, I can fight back. I have the audacity to, that flair of you can do whatever you want. So then you take that mindset and you take it out on the street with the police and everything, and they figure, oh, you think you're a tough guy, and then they kill you right there. Mm-hmm. So what I think that Black Lives Matter needs to start within the communities, in the homes first, before they even try to deal with racial people and making them change and whatnot.
Right. As you are here today with three males, and with three males who have fathers in their home. All of you have fathers in your home. And so I'm asking you, Israel, in terms of what Layla just stated, what do you have to add to that?
Okay. So I'm just saying, hypothetically, if I wasn't like a part of the church with the leader, Pastor Man, and my father, I probably would have been off. But since I'm like in the church and stuff, I'm like, my father has control of me. He tells me what to do, I do it. Pastor tells me what to do, I do it. They rebuke me, I change. I mean, having a father is a really important thing to have in your life.
Right.
Because I don't know, you'll be able to do things successfully with a father. Like if you how do I put this? I mean, if you don't have a father in your house, you're gonna go off. Like I seen kids on the street, I don't know, ghetto, and I know they have no fathers because of the way they act and the way the spirit is.
Right.
But the point I'm trying to make is having a father in your life is really an important thing to have. So you can go places. You can go places with a leader in your
Now I find it interesting, Israel, that you stated that if you didn't have your father and you didn't have Pastor Manning, you think you'd be just like the boys on the street. Is that what you said in the beginning?
Yes.
That's quite interesting and profound. Ishmael and Zachariah, both of you have your father in your home. As Layla just stated, that she thinks if Black Lives Matter really wanted to help Black people, they need to focus on building the community. What do you all have to add to that?
Well, yes, I do my father in my home, but sometimes my father, he works.
Right.
And he works long hours, sometimes
Yes.
like 12-hour shifts.
Right.
So he was never always there. So sometimes when they're talking about how fathers could change how the person acts, I kind of half about that. Because one thing is, a father figure is nice to have. You need someone to look up to. And those young people look up to their father as their father figure. But, sometimes I feel like it's just how you raise a child in general. If you try to focus on raising your child, okay, like don't talk back to the police or say thank you, hold the doors for others, like raise them like to be a kind soul, they'll do what you tell them to do as long as you keep them on the right track. So that's what I'm not saying. A father's not like a big, like if you don't have a father, that doesn't mean your child won't grow up like to be sassy and stuff. I do feel like it could help to have two parents to in a sense, like really, how do you say, like teach the child. But I wouldn't also say one parent's not bad either. The parent has to learn how to, in a sense, teach them. Because
I will say this.
You could still teach them what a father could teach them.
Right. I will say this, Ishmael and Zach, and you may not see it now as young men, but your father owns his own business, and I think that needs to be said. And because he owns his own business, he does work long hours, but the two of you often work in your father's business with him, along with him many times. And so your father is instilling work ethics in you, but you may not realize it right now. Having those moments of working in your father's business is instilling work ethics in you that many young Black males don't have, let alone they don't have a father. But to have a father to have his own business, it's a little different. And you may not see it now because you are young, but my father had his own business when he was growing up. And I worked in my father's business as well as my siblings did. We all worked in his business. It adds something to you as an individual when you can work. You can see your father have his own business and work within the business, knowing that it belongs to him. And so I think that needs to be said, as I've heard the statements that you make. But certainly a father does make a difference, and especially in the life of a young boy, a father definitely makes a difference. But I hear what you are saying. There are times when a father is not available not because he doesn't want to be, but maybe the father has died. Has been deceased. And so a woman winds up raising children, but they usually have other male role models within the family that they can look up to. If you hear what I'm saying, usually an uncle or a cousin or older brother. But as I go back to what Israel said, having his father and pastor, a strong man in the house really does make a difference. And certainly with many of these young boys that we are witnessing with Black Lives Matter and just around the world, especially in the Hamite communities, they don't have fathers. They don't have fathers. And no matter how good a mother is, she cannot teach a boy how to be a man. It's never going to happen. She could work as hard as she could, but she cannot teach a boy how to be a man. There's just no way that will ever happen. So on that note, I want to take a quick break, and then we are going to be back. And when we come back, I want to talk to you about defunding the police as we talk about Black Lives Matter. And I want to get into the coronavirus because it's still here. So everyone stay tuned. We'll be back with more of the current events class. Welcome to today's current events class. I am Sabbath Rachel LaFleur. right, we are back from the break. And again, I am Sabbath Rachel LaFleur here with some of our high school students. Before the break, we were talking about Black Lives Matter. And I want to turn the corner in regards to defunding the police. Now, you know that has been an issue that has been brought up since the death of George Floyd. And it's an ongoing conversation that people are having. So in regards to defunding the police, a couple of things, and I made some notes here that I wanted to share with you, and I'm sure you all are aware of this. One is San Leandro in California is the first city to defund the police. And again, before I start, let me state this. Defunding the police, as you all know, means to reallocate monies that usually goes towards the police and put them in other places. Many people believe that if you take the monies that were normally given out to the police department and put them in different organizations within a community, that will help the community, all right? So that is what it means by defunding. But this is what I have to add, because when I hear defunding the police, for me, it means that we won't have as many police officers as we see now. Now, a couple of things. In New York City, on July 4th, the New York Police Department police officers are being encouraged to do a strike for July 4th. And I'm sure that you all have seen this in the news. And so my question to you is, based upon all this that we have seen, the shortage of police officers calling in sick in Atlanta, police officers not answering their calls when they are being called, and not all of them, but certainly many police officers have walked off of their jobs and so forth. Now, this is not a question about whether they're bad police officers. We already know that they exist. We already know that there are racist police officers. So this is not about that. My question to you in general is, do you think they should defund the police department? I see Ishmael has his hand raised up first. Go ahead.
Well, if I ask should they defund it? No, they shouldn't. Because first of all, the police department, it's a law enforcement. There's always been some sort of law enforcement around. Even back in biblical times, I believe it was the Levites who enforced the law on the Israelites. And even the Egyptians, the people who would guard Egypt, would also serve to enforce the laws of the land.
Right.
There's always been some sort of law enforcement, even if it wasn't big laws like ones we have now, or simple laws then. Someone was there to enforce it. And if you defund it, what you're really doing is maybe either causing cops to start being lazy, or you're just making less officers to go around. Mm-hmm. So if it was big stuff, maybe there's not that many this time to go help out with the with big stuff like a bank robbery or something. Mm-hmm. Not gonna have as many as they used to. And if they're doing, and for the bad cops, I don't think there's really just a good thing as a good cop or a bad cop. I think there's bad people who wear the uniform. And there's good people who wear the uniform. There's a good person who came there hoping to go save lives and make a difference. But now he's a part of this thing where this one killed somebody. Now everybody else is assumed a cop is this. When really there are genuinely good people who are police officers who went over there just to help others. Right. And then there are other people who are genuinely bad people who are police officers who went to ruin other people's day or wanted to feel powerful.
Now, I really like that statement you just made, that you don't think there are good cops and bad cops. You just think that there are good people and bad people who happen to wear police uniforms. I really like that statement. Layla, what do you have to add to what Ishmael just stated?
Well, I do agree with him on what he said, but I don't think that they should defund the police because there are some good police officers. Not all of them are bad. It's just the fact that some of them, they put a bad name for the police officers. Mm-hmm. So it's they always get labeled as, the police officers, they're they're killers, they do this, they do that. So it tarnishes their name, and everybody thinks, okay, all of them are bad, but not all of them are bad. And I don't think we should like totally defund them because there's times like people are gonna need help, like they're gonna need police officers, and who's gonna respond to the call?
Right.
Like, it's lives depend on it as well. So I mean, I don't really quite agree with them defunding the police.
Okay, Israel, what do you have to add?
Not much, but it's like there are good cops and bad cops, but it's like the saying: if one gets in trouble, we all get in trouble. But with the police, if one how do I say this? If one cop does something bad, then that one person messes up the whole title for the good cop. And yeah, that was it, basically.
It's almost like that saying, one rotten apple spoils the bunch, right? Is that what you're, okay, that's what you're saying. All right, Zachariah?
Well, I feel like all my fellow classmates have said, that there aren't bad cops. They're just some people who wear the uniform, but for bad reasons. And for me, I feel like some people, they just kind of abuse the power that they've been given. They think now that they're above the law. Well, some of them, again, not all of them do that. And that makes people feel like that they're all bad because now they feel like they're above the law.
Right.
Not all of them are. There's that handful. They feel like, oh, well, now since I'm a cop, I can do something and I can't get in trouble.
Well, let me ask you this question. Just think about, again, the article that we read in regards to that police officers in New York City are being encouraged to have a strike on July 4th. We all live in New York City. I know that you all have been hearing the firecrackers that have been going on nonstop. I mean, it almost sounds like World War III in the area I live, with the firecrackers that have been going on every single night since the end of May, beginning of June. But think about on July 4th, if police officers actually do strike, and that when they are needed, they don't answer the calls. Just think about what kind of chaos that would be for us here living in New York City. And also think about the fact that this call is being made by many of Generation Z, which is your generation. Generation Z are those, and they're conflicting years as to what some say born after 1997, some say born from 1995 to 2012 or 2016. But this is Generation Z, again, which is your generation. Of course, we're going to throw in some millennials within that group as well. But this is what they are calling for: defunding the police officers. And the thing that I find interesting, and again, you'll share your response to what I'm saying, is I find it so very interesting that many people who are calling for defunding the police, a lot of them, especially the high up people who have these high positions, don't actually live in the hood, don't actually live in the ghetto. They want to defund the police. But the other aspect is that it's coming from a lot of young people who are saying to defund the police. And as you were speaking, Ishmael, when we need them, when you call them, if Black Lives Matter were about the business of truly caring about Black lives and work on building the communities, who's going to put things in order? If there are no police officers, if the community is already broken, you all just stated that there are no fathers in the home and the importance of fathers in the home. What kind of order is there going to be? Is there going to be any order? Who's going to run out when something happens, Ishmael?
Hey, listen, nobody. No one's going to come because now they feel like they're being mistreated out of everything they've done. Now they feel like they're trying to defund them, trying to take the thing that, like I said, that some people who are actually trying to do stuff,
right?
Now they're being like misjudged and stuff. Like I said before, there's always been a type of law enforcement.
Right.
Always. To enforce the laws and tell people what was right and what was wrong. Now people want to take that away. That's just caused nothing but anarchy. It's going to cause nothing but chaos and destruction. Now someone can go murder somebody, and then what are they going to do? Call the cops? They took the cops away.
Yeah.
They do whatever they want. And with the firecracker thing, I wanted to mention that I know somebody who lives on a tall building, and they shoot firecrackers right next to his building, and sometimes they actually the pieces of the firecracker do fireworks and firecrackers, and they'll throw up in the air, and sometimes one landed in one of my friend's building, and actually went off.
Right.
And I heard it through his mic, and I actually was wrong. He said someone like literally threw a firecracker in my house. And I was surprised because I haven't heard any firecrackers go on, like firecrackers or fireworks, but it's become more and more popular.
Yeah, it has. It definitely has. But as we're talking about defunding the police, and this is what they're calling for, and again, the city in California, who's amongst the first city to actually defund the police, I guess we're going to see what takes place. I think it's important that we remember we're in the midst of the tribulation, right? And so a lot of these things, in fact, all of these things that we are witnessing is par for the course, is part of what is going to take place in the tribulation. We haven't even gone through the famines and the pestilence yet and the earthquakes in dire places. But we're also in the midst of the coronavirus, which again is part of the tribulation. And as we've been home now for the past 3 months, school is almost over for us. I'm sure you all are excited. Yay, school is almost over. We've been dealing with the coronavirus. And even as we speak now, I think the latest now, and even when I make mention of this number now, by tomorrow or by this evening, this is going to change. 29 states and the U.S. territory showed an increase in their 7-day average of new reported cases. As of Monday of this week, there are reported 2,290,000 cases of coronavirus, and 118,000 people have died as of Monday of this week. Now, again, this number is going to change. It changes every single day. So on top of everything else that we've been talking about, we're still dealing with the coronavirus. And so what do you all think in terms of all of this that you are witnessing, between dealing with coronavirus, between dealing with all the protests, dealing with Black Lives Matter, dealing with police being called to be defunded? As young people, part of this Generation Z that I just spoke about, how is this affecting you all?
Well, ma'am.
How is this affecting you?
Well, obviously this is not normal for us because, now because of the virus, we have to walk around with masks on. And I mean, we wasn't doing that a couple months ago.
Yeah.
So it's different. And it's like, it's not normal for us because we're not used to this. Like earlier this year, going back towards like last year, everything was like, I don't want to say fine, but everything was pretty like normal for us. But now that this is happening, I mean, I feel like it has changed a lot of people in a lot of ways. Also, I mean, I know there's more to come, and that it's gonna be a lot on us because us as Generation Z, we haven't lived that long. Like we've been living, but we haven't lived that long. So I just hope that we're able to adapt to these changes and, be able to move on forward stronger, because I know like being in quarantine and, not really having much of a social life because we didn't school stop and everything. For a lot of kids my age and maybe even a little beneath me, I know they felt a little socially different now that this is over. Right. So, I mean, I don't know if they'll be able to become accustomed to that again because of the virus. But, I mean, let's hope that there's, a little bit of change, I guess, in our lifestyle instead of, just being in solidarity by ourselves at home.
Okay. Yeah. And Israel, watching all of this coronavirus, protests, all of these things that you've been seeing since school has shut down, as far as us meeting on a day-to-day basis in person, how has this affected you?
I mean, I can't go places. I can't go chill with my friends. Well, yeah, my friends and stuff. And I'm limited to do things. Really, I can only go to one place or another. I can't get sidetracked and go somewhere else. Because the coronavirus. But like, I can't get my hair cut, and like that's affecting me. And the barbershops are open too. Like, that affects me too. But my family and I, we're not able to, like, I don't know, once in a while go out occasionally and eat, or just go to the park or something. But not just me, and nobody's allowed. Like, nobody's allowed. They're limited to do things.
Now, you just brought up the fact that barbershops are open now, but you can't go. So when you're saying that you can't go, though, we're in phase 2 of New York City. You all know that, right? And phase 2 means that there are things that are opened up more so now than they were last week. But when you say that you can't go, it means that you and your family and your parents have made the decisions that even though these things are open, we are not going. Is that it?
Something like that. I mean, I can't. They'll probably allow me to go, but I probably can't go with a lot of people inside the shop.
Yeah.
They may have coronavirus. I may not know it.
Yeah, definitely. Ishmael, how has it been? How has all of this, everything that we've been dealing with the past 3 months, how has it affected you as an individual?
When we're talking about the quarantine, I mean, it's affected me positively and negatively. Because on one hand, I'm just trying to learn more about myself. I got time to do that. To learn myself more. On the other hand, I'm talking to myself, so I'm going crazy. It's like both evenly like good and bad because one hand like that with the quarantine, and the barbershops, my barbershop's open, but they're doing appointments now, so you got to do it at a certain time, a certain like time schedule. You got to like say, oh, can we do it that guy over there, that one over there? I want them to cut my hair,
right?
Like that. Now we're talking about with the how the riots and everything. I gotta admit, and how you mentioned with the earlier about the corona, how much cases went up.
Yeah,
I think it's mostly because of the marches. Because sometimes humans are stupid and they completely forgot about the coronavirus. And after George Floyd, they completely forgot about the coronavirus. They forgot they had to stay home.
Right.
So they went out. Everybody wearing masks, sure, but not gloves.
Yeah.
So like everybody's touching their own, their own man. Like sometimes I was a human, mostly teenagers. The teenagers are the ones who are mostly doing this, so they're mostly being stupid. But sometimes it's the human race in general. We do stupid stuff that help affect everybody.
So let me ask you: has this been hard for you? Has everything that you've been dealing with? Has it been hard for you as young people? Because this is a lot for just adults to have to withstand with everything that we've been witnessing. Has it been difficult for you as young people? Zachariah?
For me personally, it's been 50-50 for that. It's been somewhat easy to go through because it's kind of just easy to stay home most of the days. When you're going to school, you don't want to go to school sometimes. So you always dream about the days you want to go stay home. So you know what you want to do already. Mm-hmm. But then when you're inside all day, you kind of miss going outside. And then, then you're like, okay, now I want to go outside, but now you can't. So then it's difficult to deal with. And then you get sick of being all day. You get bored very easily. That's why I'm saying it's 50-50 because at one hand, you know what you want to do. And you're going to have fun for a certain amount of time. And then the other, you're bored. You want to go outside.
Yeah.
But you can't because you're going to get sick.
Yeah. I've often stated that as much as you may enjoy YouTube or TikTok or any of the other things you're doing, you cannot do that all day, every day. After a while, even that gets boring and you just need something else to stimulate your mind. So I certainly understand that, where you're coming from. Let me turn the corner again and ask you all this question. Tribulation Trump is the illegal president of the United States. You all know that. And watching him, his rally that took place this past Monday, or was it Monday or was it sometime? his rally took place in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Watching Tribulation Trump in dealing with the coronavirus and dealing with the protests and dealing with people in general, what do you think about what you have witnessed with this president? I see, Zach, why your hand goes up.
With this president, I see how easily people can be overcome by anger.
What do you mean by that?
That people are very mad at him at the moment because not only did he not try to do anything to prevent the virus from getting into the United States, he bombed he bombed someone else. He fired some missiles at another person. Another person across the world. And then he says very racist things to other people. And you can see that people are really mad at him and how easily influenced they are by their anger. That they're really trying to kind of make him pay for what he's done. That's like they're trying with the rallies, they're trying to get him to see what he's done. But and you just see that he doesn't really care. Since he's the president, he doesn't care what other people think.
Okay. And Layla, what do you think?
I mean, we all know that he's like not really stable enough to be our president. I think that he doesn't really take much of this stuff seriously, and that he thinks it's going to blow over eventually, but it's not. And, with him, it's just like a never ending story. Like, at this point, we just got to hope that we as a nation will be able to survive, because the way he's leading us is like, we're not going anywhere. And, his supporters are brainwashed because he's not a good president at all. Right. He doesn't do anything for the people except just make jokes while he's at his little campaigns or whatever he do. And he's just something else.
Israel, what do you think of observing Tribulation Trump these past almost 4 years now?
We need a new president.
That's just the bottom line, right? We just need a new president, right? Do you think a new president is going to make a difference in terms of us living within the tribulation? Do you think that's going to make a difference?
He has sense and knows the right thing. I maybe give a chance, yeah.
Okay, maybe. Zachariah, I see your hand, but let me get Ish real quick and ask him what are his thoughts about Tribulation Trump.
That he's just bad. He's doing terrible at his job. He's just terrible.
Okay.
Because,
what?
Like my brother said, he tried to launch missiles. I don't see the last president even attempting to do that. And then again, when the coronavirus done, all he did was hide in a bunker. Well, he let all of us stay here, tell us to wear masks, but he decides to go hide in a bunker. Then again, he doesn't even know how to type on Twitter. You see the words he messes up?
Yes.
He's the worst president. He's going to go down in history for that. He's going to go down in history as the worst U.S. president to ever exist.
Now, Zachariah, you had your hand up. You had something to say?
Yes. That the question you asked Israel, saying would another president help? That depends on the president. Because we elected a man called Trump because he made promises that he couldn't keep.
Yeah.
He said that he would make America great again, but he made America worse again. And we fell for those promises because we believed that he would actually do them, and we let other candidates who could have done good go away. So I feel that if we had a better president who cared for this country and was willing to make changes to make changes for the better, then we could have a really good president. But presidents who are really good usually have been assassinated.
You had me thinking in terms of presidents. Now, Tribulation Trump, again, obviously is the president right now. For 8 years, we had the long-legged Mac Daddy, right? The world calls him Obama. the so-called first Black president. And we saw that during his reign, he did absolutely nothing, right? Especially for the Hamite community. He didn't do anything. And I spoke to you all about the deaths that have taken place over this past weekend in Chicago. And the thing that I wanted to remind you all was that Pastor Manning had prophesied during the reign of Obama that the deaths would continue to take place in Chicago because they put a man who was illegal in the House of the Presidency, right? Because we know that Obama was chosen because he was so-called Black, right? Which is also another, is racist, really. To choose a man because of his skin color is racist, right? And we know that a lot of the white liberals chose him to try to say, okay, well, Black people, we're giving you something. But he didn't do anything for Black people. And a lot of Black people recognize that has taken place. But when we talk about the world that we are living in now, and again, going back to you as young people, it's difficult for adults to handle everything that we are witnessing. So as young people at 15, 16, 17 years old, I'm sure that this can't be easy for you to witness, watching all of this take place. I mean, 3 months ago, we were going to school every day. Your teachers were getting on your nerves as they normally do. Asking you to get your work done and get your homework done, and you were able to sit together and have lunch and laugh and do all of those great things together. And here we are 3 months later, everyone is in their own home. Though we're in phase 2 of New York City, things are never going to be the same again. Do you think about that? That the way things are now, that how much the world has changed in just 3 months. Just imagine, it's only been 3 months and the world has changed in such a huge way. Do you think about the future as far as young people and wonder what is in store for you as young people? Israel.
I just want to be over because you know about me and my group, we're trying to get out there. And
you talking about give it up?
Yes.
Okay.
And we can't do that because coronavirus. But I just hope it ends soon because I'm trying to do great things, you know?
Yes, you're trying to do great things, and you will do great things. Do you ever think about, Ishmael, how this is going to affect you in the future, just looking at everything that's taking place just in the past 3 months?
A little bit, yeah, sometimes, because we don't know how long this thing is gonna be around. They say it's going away, but that could just, they could be saying that trying to get people more out of their house or trying to make people feel safer or something. We don't really know if it's gone away or not. And if it hasn't gone away, if this keeps up for longer than we expected, this could just be how we normally live now. We have everything through our phones. We have to wear masks and stuff outside. We'd have to do all these things now that everybody had to start getting used to, because now all of a sudden, this is how life's going to be now. And in a sense where, how do I say, we're in this, like, everybody now has to adapt, and we're not sure when we're going to have to stop adapting to what we're in now.
Right.
And if we do it for too long, we're going to just think this is normal. So if we ever go back to what we normally do, we're going to have to start adapting to that again.
Right.
If you know what I'm trying to say.
I understand clearly what you're trying to say. Zachariah, what do you think? I see your mind going. What do you think?
I feel like when this whole thing is over, I feel like we're actually going to go back to normal pretty quick.
You think so? Why do you think so?
I think that everyone is so used to how we were living before that even if we were like to stop for a year, we'll probably go back to it instantly. And it's also kind of sad to think of it too, because how this pandemic, people haven't been polluting. And you just know when this is done that it's going to start right back up again. And also it's kind of interesting to see how people how they've adapted to this situation fairly fast. Nah, as soon as they told us that there's a virus going around and you wear masks and you clean your hands, automatically we adapted to that, and we automatically started wearing masks. We washed our hands every time. Everyone bought all the toilet paper out for some reason. But besides that, I just feel after this, we're going to go back to our normal lives. Pollution going to start back up again. And that's pretty much it.
Okay. And Layla, what do you think?
I just hope that, before I was saying that I wanted the coronavirus to like go away, but I don't think it's like really going to go away totally. Because, back in like March, I thought we would start wearing this around summertime, like now, like June, July. And, it's right about that time and we're still wearing them, and we have to wear them for our safety and whatnot. And I'm just thinking about this leading all the way up into the fall, because a lot of people are saying we're going to just have to keep being cautious and wear our masks. So, I feel like this is going to become a normality for us. I just hope by next year that things could be a little smoother so I could graduate physically and not virtually.
Right.
But if it's in God's plan for it to go into next year, he got to do what he got to do.
Well, I thank you all. Our time is up. That went by really quick. I thank you all for sharing with me today. I know that we are getting closer and closer to the last day of school. And I know that this has not been easy for you as students, but I just pray that you all will continue to just be strong and stay safe. Do not take off your masks, no matter what they say. I know that we are in phase 2 in New York City. Keep your masks on. As we are watching the spikes go on in the various cities of the United States of America, you want to make sure that you stay safe and keep your family safe as well. So don't take off your mask nor your gloves if you're going to go outside. And please continue to practice social distancing as much as you can. Thank you again for sharing with me today. Thank all of you out there for watching this week's edition of the Current Events class. It's truly been a blessing. I thank you for taking the time to share with us. And until we should meet again, peace out, everyone. Welcome to today's Current Events class. I am Sabbath Rachel LaFleur,